It's your boy Dealer, and for today's story, you better buckle up, because our main character is a depressed, anemic, and perpetually single regressor. He's now enduring his sixth lifetime. And yes, he retains it all: his memories, his skills, and all the emotional trauma he never signed up for. You'd think by now he'd be an SSS rank cheat code who saves Earth with ease, right? Think again. In every single regression, thousands of dragons descend upon his world, treating it like a cosmic buffet. And even with SS rank stats, our hero gets utterly crushed, folded harder than a cheap suit. So, entering his seventh run, he finally declares, "Enough. It's time for a different strategy." The real problem? Baby dragons. They wander into this world to play, but they get hurt, or worse, corrupted. And when that happens, their entire clan rage quits the universe and obliterates the planet in revenge. So what's our hero's genius new plan? He's going to kidnap them. That's right, he'll snatch the baby dragons, protect them, and essentially become the galaxy's most overstressed dragon nanny. Anything to stop the apocalypse. But will his insane plan work? Or is he destined to be burnt to a crisp for a seventh time? Stick around to find out. And if you're already hooked, show some love with a like and subscribe. It helps your boy Dealer keep serving up these high-quality recaps. Today's tale is Kidnapped Dragons. Let's dive in. A voice cried out, pleading for release. It was a woman with vibrant green hair, cradling a lifeless, blue-haired woman in her arms. She screamed at the man in the black suit, demanding to know why he would do this to them. The man simply stared back, his expression unreadable. She accused him, declaring that he was the reason the woman in her arms took her own life. "Are you satisfied now?" she wailed. He met her gaze, his voice cold. "You ask why. I'm certain you're fully aware." He told her that their imprisonment, and her friend's despair, was a fate they brought upon themselves. She fought back, screaming that he was wrong, that they had done nothing. But he'd heard enough. "It's over," he stated. This was his sixth regression. And once again, he had failed to stop the end of the world. He could only watch as dragons rained destruction upon the city. This man, Jitae, wondered what good listening to her would have done. A dragon spotted him on the rooftop and unleashed a torrent of flame. Even as death approached, he felt no regret for his actions. He drew his formless sword, a blade of SS rank. After clawing his way through this hellscape 6 times, he had learned one crucial truth. His failures and the experience they forged were everything. He shot forward, a blur of motion. Bravely, he vaulted over the snapping jaws of the beasts and began his deadly dance. One by one, they fell to his blade in a whirlwind of steel and scales. When the dust settled, he stood upon the ruins and looked back at the carnage. A deep sigh escaped his lips. No matter how many he slew, their numbers were endless. A system window appeared. Planet Earth has gained the status abnormality, apocalypse. He had failed, but even so, the authority known as Grand Clock X began to rewind the world's time. He watched as a golden light enveloped everything. As he closed his eyes, he thought to himself that this life wasn't completely meaningless. And just like that, the world's clock was reset. The scene shifts to a vibrant, bustling city. Suddenly, something strange caught the public's eye. A rift tore through the air, looking like a sinister doorway from a nightmare. People whispered nervously, wondering if they should call the police. A woman urged her friend to leave, a bad feeling creeping up her spine. But the man just laughed it off. "Stop freaking out," he said. "It's not like we're going to die." He figured the portal might disappear at any moment, and he wanted to snap a picture with it before the authorities arrived. With his back turned, he never saw the monstrous creatures beginning to crawl out from the darkness. The woman's face went white with terror. Her phone slipped from her grasp, and her legs gave out, leaving her frozen as monsters poured into the street and the crowd scattered in chaos. This took place in the 21st century, an era where mysterious gates opened across the globe, unleashing hordes of monsters upon humanity. It seemed as if the flame of civilization was about to be extinguished forever. But from those ashes, a new spark was born. Humanity entered a new era called the New Genesis. Young hunters with extraordinary potential were gathered from every corner of the world, raised and trained on an artificial island known as Hatchling. This was the origin of the World Academy City, Lear, and our regressor, now on his 7th attempt at life, was heading straight for it. The scene cuts to a man whose arm has morphed into a deadly blade, holding a terrified woman hostage. "Back off," he snarled, "or the girl dies." The hostage was sobbing, desperately begging him to spare her life. The police aimed their weapons at the man, Joe Hoshik, ordering him to deactivate his ability and surrender, but he refused to listen to those pigs. He knew he was done for either way and decided he'd rather take her with him. But suddenly, a voice came from right behind him. "They told you to surrender." Hoshik's blood ran cold. He hadn't sensed a thing. He frantically thought, "When did this bastard get behind me?" Tossing the hostage aside, the man lunged at Jitae. "Another pig cop?" he snarled. Jitae's response was cold and clear. "Not a pig cop, a police officer." With a single shoulder check, he sent Hosek flying, slamming him hard onto the pavement. His colleagues cried out, telling him to watch his strength. He simply apologized. For a moment, he'd forgotten the sheer power he now wielded. This man is Jitae, an officer from the Lair Metropolitan Police Station. Back at the station, the buzz was all about Hosek, a notorious human trafficker and a former superhuman. He'd finally been cornered after a desperate chase, taking an innocent civilian hostage. They asked how Jitae even found him. His reply was chillingly simple. I picked him up on the way. The woman at the front desk reviewed the report, amazed. Incredible work, she said, but her eyes saw more. Something about him had changed. He seemed taller, more imposing, and even handsome. A veteran officer overheard the news and approached him. So the rumors were true. He had single-handedly caught Hosek. I did, Jitae confirmed. But when the older officer saw Hosek's battered state, his jaw dropped. Jitae, you might have beaten him a little too hard. Someone's going to scream about excessive force again. But deep down, Jitae felt a strange disconnect. He didn't recognize a single face in the room. Throughout all his regressions, he had never once come to work. This was the very first time he was meeting any of his colleagues. Jitae hauled Hosek to his feet. I can take it from here, he stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. The reason he abandoned his normal life, the reason he endured endless regressions to stop the apocalypse, was all for the hatchlings. To be precise, the death of the baby dragons. From their home world of Ascalifa, they come to Earth on a pilgrimage to experience happiness. But this world is unforgiving. Some are driven mad by the endless wars, losing control and perishing. Others are buried under an avalanche of human malice, their young minds shattering, unable to endure the darkness. And some, unable to fulfill the grand mission given to them by life. I choose to stop their own hearts. Every time this tragedy occurs, the adult dragons descend in fury, unleashing their grief upon all of humanity. The regressor lived through this hell again and again, becoming so powerful he could grow no stronger. But even that absolute power wasn't enough to save the world alone. That is why, in this 7th regression, he will walk a different path entirely. The female officer hurried after him as he was leaving. Do you have any plans after work? She asked with a hopeful smile. A new restaurant just opened. But I don't have anyone to go with. She invited him to dinner, but he gently refused. I have somewhere else I need to be. Puzzled, she asked where he could possibly be going. His answer was on a different scale. Europe. Meanwhile, in the sunlit streets of Florence, Italy, a young woman with hair like fresh spring leaves played with local children, placing a delicate flower crown upon their heads. Their laughter was a beautiful melody, until the moment ended and they ran off. It was then a voice spoke from the shadows behind her. That voice made her entire being freeze. She turned, and her eyes met his. It was Jitae. You need to come with me, he said. With her rank S skill, collapsed babble, the green-haired woman could understand any language in the world. She smiled gracefully. And why have you come looking for me? He was blunt. I have business with you. So, you know what I am, she surmised. He confirmed it. And you? He asked. Do you know who I am? She answered with a confident yes. You Jitae, she declared. Am I correct? His eyes narrowed. Where did you hear that name? She simply pointed a delicate finger at his chest. His name tag was right there. She let out a small giggle. I'm just kidding. In reality, she had no clue who this man was or what he wanted. But she knew one thing without a doubt. He was overwhelmingly, terrifyingly strong, a predator that did not belong in this peaceful place. He didn't respond to her joke. Are you here to kill me? She tested. No, was his flat reply. Kidnapping then? She guessed. Close enough, he admitted. Her eyes glinted with mischief. Or could you be one of those rare humans with a strange desire for dragons? He let out a weary sigh, his patience thinning. Stop fooling around. My purpose is to protect you from this dangerous world, he explained. But if you refuse to cooperate, I won't hesitate to use more. Persuasive methods. He knew the secret of her power. The eyes of the Green Dragon clan could perceive the threads of fate. Compared to others, she was faster, more perceptive, able to grasp any situation in an instant. It is time to make your decision, he commanded. She processed his threat instantly. So, if I follow you quietly, you'll treat me kindly? Yes, he confirmed. Well, it's not like I have much of a choice, she conceded. But you must promise. Treat me with the kindness you would show an honored guest. She held out her pinky, a childish gesture for a promise. Though her demeanor was calm, he saw the faint tremor in her hand. He accepted, their fingers linking in a silent, binding vow. Later, at his home, the green hatchling finally awoke. Stepping out of her room, she looked around for him, wondering if he was awake yet. She found him sitting on the sofa, and he was speaking to a swirling mass of pure darkness. I will be fine, he told the shadow. Go and do as I have commanded. This was no mere shadow, it was his rank SS skill, the Shadow of the Grand Duke, an ability that summoned a perfect clone with up to 50% of his own immense power. As the mist solidified into his exact likeness, it spoke. "Your will shall be done," the clone vowed, before melting away. His clone strode past the young green hatchling. She offered a warm greeting, marveling at how the two men were perfect mirror images. Guy told her to pay it no mind, explaining that the clone handles his work. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Do you not go to work yourself?" He revealed the clone was an extension of his own ability, so technically, he was the one working. Besides, his duty was to remain by her side. That explanation seemed to satisfy her. She took a seat next to him, suggesting they finally have breakfast. She gently urged him to eat, reminding him he'd skipped dinner. When he insisted he was fine, she pouted. "It feels strange for me to eat when the homeowner isn't." He tilted his head, asking if she truly ate 3 times a day. He knew that for dragons, eating was not a necessity for survival. "It's not about survival," she clarified with a bright smile. "Eating delicious food just makes me happy and full of energy." She then asked him to join her for grocery shopping, but his answer was the same stoic reply. "I'm fine." This only steeled her resolve to teach him the glorious power of breakfast. Later, at the mall, every head was turning, all eyes fixed on one spot. Men, women, adults, and children alike were completely captivated. Their gazes were locked onto the stunning pair, the green, hatchling, and Guy. After they had finished their shopping, Guy noticed something. She had bought an enormous amount of food just for breakfast. She explained that when she'd inspected his kitchen, she found it completely barren, not a single ingredient or utensil. She declared that from this day forward, she would be cooking, so they needed to be properly stocked with all the basics. She was eager to rush home and begin, but he stopped her. "Leave the groceries. We'll eat out," he said. Confused, she asked why. He told her there was a place they needed to visit first, together. Besides, he noted, the time for breakfast had long since passed. She looked down, feeling a pang of guilt as she apologized. "It's just, shopping for the first time in so long was incredibly fun." Curious, she asked about their destination. He simply said there were things she needed to live in this world. "Hurry," he urged. "We have much to do." Their first stop was a man with a mechanical eye, a total creep. The man's one good eye roamed over her, unable to hide his awe. "Is this your new girlfriend?" he asked with a greasy smile. Guy's glare was like ice. "If you value your remaining eye, shut your mouth and make it." The man pouted but immediately got to work, creating her official identification. From there, they visited a bank and then a jewelry store, where she acquired a high-tech watch that projected holographic screens. By the time their errands were done, dusk was settling in. She stared at her new ID card, a strange feeling blooming in her chest. "Have you never had one?" he asked. "Not just an ID," she replied softly. "I've never had a bank account, or a watch like this either." Her confession made him wonder. How had she possibly survived on Earth until now? For her surname, he had given her his own, Guy. She then asked about her given name, Bomb. With his typical bluntness, he explained it was based on the 4 seasons, since there were, after all, 4 great dragons. Bomb, the Korean word for spring. She whispered the name to herself. Guy Bomb. Spring. The season when new life blossoms across the world. She thought it was an incredibly beautiful name. Looking up at him, she confessed, "You're a little scary, you know." Her instincts screamed that he was dangerous, yet her heart told her he wasn't evil. He scoffed. "How can you be so certain after just one day?" "Because I am of the Green Dragon clan," she said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "My intuition is sharper than anyone's." She held his gaze. A radiant smile spread across her face. "So, is it all right if I watch over you, just a little longer?" The smile of a green dragon. In all his countless regressions, he had never once witnessed it. She then tugged at his sleeve, eager to go home, so she could cook for him. Her words gave him pause as he gazed at the gently falling cherry blossoms. For the first time, he began to think this new life might not be so bad. But that night, in an African wasteland, a red-haired woman was toying with a soldier. The man tried to act tough, but it was an empty facade. He spat curses, calling her a monster and threatening that she wouldn't get away unharmed. Her response was a single devastating kick to his face. "Ugh, your face is so ugly I think I kicked too hard," she sneered. "Is he dead?" she mused, before declaring her perfect record. 199 wins, 0 losses. A thrill shot through her. Who would be her 200th opponent? The news was flooded with reports from South Africa. Stories of conflict, ravaged towns, and countless casualties. They spoke of a mysterious teen known only as the Night Hunter. Seeing this, Guy knew. It was time to make his move. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Dinner is ready," Bomb called out, but when he arrived at the table, he was met with a culinary nightmare. It was a pile of dark, gooey rice with an entire fish sticking vertically out of it. He eyed it with extreme caution as she proudly asked for his verdict. She cheerfully explained it was inspired by a dish she once saw in the United Kingdom. She figured it would pair wonderfully with rice. Koreans love rice, after all, she added. He said nothing, simply staring at the monstrosity. He then changed the subject entirely. Tomorrow, I'm going to get red. Bomb's cheerful demeanor vanished. Bringing her back will not be easy, she warned. She will not come as peacefully as I did. He urged her that persuading their target would be a breeze if she simply tagged along, but she hesitated, admitting that crossing paths with a different dragon house always brought an incredibly awkward tension. Pressing for answers, he finally broke through her defenses. With a heavy sigh, she explained the harsh truth. Every dragon faction chased completely different desires. While she found absolute peace in taking her time to craft and create, the Crimson Dragons were cut from an entirely different, chaotic cloth. They lived for the thrill of war and violence, constantly flaunting their overwhelming dominance. At that exact moment, it hit Jai like a truck. Using sheer force to tame a red dragon was a catastrophic mistake. To a creature forged in fire, bowing to someone was a fate far worse than death. His tone turned deadly serious as he warned her that all hell would break loose if they didn't reel the fiery hatchling in soon. Lethal hunters were already tracking her down, and at this reckless pace, her demise was guaranteed. Pleading with her to join his side, he hoped they could settle this escalating conflict without shedding another drop of blood. Catching the sudden, complex shift in her expression, he narrowed his eyes and asked what was troubling her. A sly smile crept onto her face as she admitted how amusing this entire situation was. After all, she had always pictured him as the lone wolf who carried the weight of the world on his own shoulders, no matter the cost. Since a plea for help from him was rarer than a falling star, she finally agreed to lend her power. Besides, deep down, she couldn't bear the thought of watching her crimson kin be slaughtered. But her assistance came with one absolute condition. When he cautiously asked for her price, she demanded that he finally finish the special meal she had prepared for him. His confident expression instantly crumbled into pure dread. She watched in amusement as his hand slowly lowered the spoon, a heavy silence filling the room. He realized instantly that he had fallen right into her trap. Meanwhile, in a desolate desert city, the streets were painted with the gruesome aftermath of a massacre. Standing amidst the ruins, the red hatchling mercilessly hoisted a terrified man by his throat. She clicked her tongue in disgust, muttering about how pathetically weak they all were. This was supposed to be her 200th glorious victory, and this boring slaughter was only fueling her blazing frustration. Having crushed every worthy opponent on the African continent, her battle-hungry mind wandered to her next playground. Rumor had it that Green was hiding out in Europe, making it the perfect destination for a chaotic reunion. Not far away, two trembling men cowered desperately behind the crumbling concrete ruins. They were the continent's proud elite sand forces, yet a single girl had effortlessly annihilated their entire squad. One soldier hissed at his comrade to stop calling her a girl. She was a battle-crazed monster, and their meager weapons were absolutely useless against her. If heavy reinforcements didn't arrive soon, their lives were completely forfeit. Suddenly, her chilling voice echoed from right above them, playfully asking what secrets they were whispering. As sheer panic seized their hearts, she flashed a wicked grin and whispered that their time was officially up. But just milliseconds before her deadly strike could connect, a blinding golden light erupted from the horizon, blasting her away with devastating kinetic force. The sheer density of the incoming mana was terrifying. Tightening her grip on her blade, she unleashed a vicious slash, tearing the magical energy to shreds. The surviving soldiers gasped in utter disbelief, witnessing a mortal directly cleave through raw mana. She truly was a monster defying the laws of reality. But out of the swirling dust, a formidable figure emerged, bringing tears of absolute relief to the terrified soldiers. It was none other than Javier Karma. Having just tested the fabled strength of the Night Hunter, he coldly commanded his men to grab the wounded and immediately fall back. Serving under the African Union, he stood at the absolute pinnacle as a rank 8 superhuman. Dusting herself off, Red let out a breathless chuckle, admitting that his flashy entrance actually caught her off guard. That heavy strike carried some serious bone-crushing weight. Her sinister grin widened as she realized she was finally staring at the area boss. Meanwhile, Javier analyzed his target. The intel said she was a girl, but her youth was genuinely shocking. Noticing his intense gaze, she playfully teased if the great hero had already fallen for her charms. After all, her captivating looks were the exact reason she used to wear a mask in battle. She arrogantly boasted that without her mask, her opponents were always too distracted by her beautiful face to put up a decent fight. Javier's respect ticked up a notch. Despite feeling the overwhelming abyss between their power levels, she didn't show a single ounce of fear. This battle-crazed fiend wasn't someone who would ever retreat, even if her very weapon shattered to pieces. She was the type to choose a glorious death on the battlefield over a cowardly life of surrender. With a blood-curdling war cry, she launched herself directly at the superhuman. She unleashed a relentless barrage of rapid-fire strikes, desperately hunting for a blind spot. Seizing a dirty opening, she aimed a vicious blow straight for his groin, only to freeze in shock when he didn't even flinch. That pathetic display told Javier everything he needed to know. This arrogant hatchling had never once crossed fists with a true apex predator. She had coasted through life, crushing nothing but weaklings. He let out a disappointed sigh, mourning the absolute waste of her monstrous talent, but his patience for these childish games had completely evaporated. He casually swung his blade, unleashing a gale that she barely managed to evade. Eyes glowing with divine authority, he summoned his ultimate technique, awakening the legendary Sword of Ra. Every instinct in Red's body screamed that dodging was utterly impossible. She crossed her arms in a desperate guard, bracing for the apocalypse. As Javier swung, the radiant blade effortlessly cleaved through the very fabric of the surrounding buildings. The catastrophic impact launched her through the air like a broken rag doll. Yet, Javier's eyes widened in slight surprise, noticing how she instinctively reinforced her arms with raw aura just in time to survive the blast. A spark of genuine admiration flared within him. Realizing he needed to crank up his power output to secure the kill, he readied his stance, but as the thick dust settled, his target had completely vanished. He assumed the arrogant monster had finally tucked her tail and fled, but deep in the shadows, Green had secretly snatched her away. Clamping a hand firmly over Red's mouth, Green forced the bewildered warrior to stay completely silent. Glaring daggers, Red demanded to know what on earth her fellow dragon was doing here. Flashing an innocent smile, Green simply replied that she rushed over to play the hero after hearing her crimson sister was in mortal danger. Red scoffed at the sheer absurdity of the situation. How could a pacifist who barely knew how to throw a punch pop out of thin air and claim to be a savior? Green's face turned dead serious, admitting a certain someone had warned her that Red's reckless bloodlust would lead to her absolute demise. Veins popping in pure annoyance, Red snarled at her to stay the hell out of her sacred duels. She fiercely commanded the creator to mind her own business, vowing to fight until her dying breath. But Green shook her head, gently reminding her that all the fun in the world permanently ends the moment their hearts stop beating. Confused by the sudden philosophical tone, Red demanded an explanation. With a heavy sigh, Green revealed the harsh reality the death of a dragon hatchling didn't just affect her alone. She knew damn well that deep down, Red didn't want to ruin the ultimate playground they had found. Staring straight into her fiery eyes, Green confessed her profound desire to remain on Earth, pleading for her stubborn sister to finally cooperate. A soothing emerald aura washed over Red, flawlessly sealing away her grievous wounds. Left utterly speechless by the miraculous recovery, the battle-crazed warrior finally swallowed her pride and asked for their next move. Fleeing was completely off the table. That monstrous superhuman would easily track them down and end their lives in a heartbeat. But Green's lips curled into a confident smirk, assuring her that her personal powerhouse would handle the cleanup. That bold claim instantly piqued Red's blazing curiosity. Stepping out of the shadows, Green dropped the final bombshell. She certainly hadn't marched into this deadly war zone alone. As if from nowhere, Jitae materialized behind Javier. "Who are you?" Javier demanded. Our boy sighed, simply stating he was a chaperone. Elsewhere, a golden-haired woman felt a strange presence. A scent of green, but it wasn't coming from her. She turned to Jitae, her eyes wide with curiosity. "And you are?" With a dazzling smile, she asked, "You're not a bad person, are you?" Back with Javier, his mind reeled with confusion. A chaperone? That girl looked like she needed a keeper, not a guardian. A redhead appeared, calling out to Green. "Is that the man you were talking about?" "Get back," Green warned. "It's dangerous here." Jitae decided this was getting too complicated. He suggested they put an end to this. Javier was bewildered. This strange man appears from nowhere, spouts absolute nonsense, and now wants to leave? He wouldn't let this go. That girl had crossed a sacred line. But Jitae pointed out she hadn't actually killed anyone, which only fueled Javier's fury. Was he being taken for a fool? Jitae calmly explained she wouldn't be around much longer. He advised Javier to just let it go. But that wasn't nearly enough to deter him. This was San's jurisdiction, after all. As a San investigator, he would arrest them both. The girl and her so-called chaperone. With a roar, he activated his sword. He shot skyward, a maelstrom of golden energy engulfing him. The world turned bright and chaotic. It looked as if he was punching a hole straight through the heavens. He charged, that divine energy exploding around him. The very ground buckled and tore apart beneath his might. Rocks shattered into the air as he prepared to slam into Jitae with absolute force. When the blast settled, he stood amidst the smoke and ruin, completely unfazed. The earth around him was a web of cracks, dust swirling at his feet. Fiery trails of energy still danced behind him like living things. Javier was certain, if this man was truly her chaperone, an attack of that level was nothing. To his utter shock, Jitae appeared behind him again, his voice laced with frustration. "For an 8th-rank superhuman, you're disappointingly uptight." Javier spun around, his mind screaming, "When did he get behind me?" He invoked the divine power of his blade, the Sword of Ra. But just as he moved to strike, he never got the chance. Something impossibly fast struck first. In a searing flash, his arm was severed clean off. Blood erupted into the air before his brain could even register the pain. Jai landed softly beside him. "Listen very carefully," he advised. "This is the unluckiest day of your life. You unfortunately encountered an unforeseen monster while pursuing that girl. You couldn't respond to its attack, losing both your arms and your eyes. Because of that grievous injury, you lost track of both your targets." Jai gripped his head, positioning his blade. "Now, forget everything." A blood-curdling scream echoed as his memories were torn away. San had healers, of course. Lost limbs and eyes could be restored. But the soul-deep terror now branded onto his spirit? That would never fade. Fear was a powerful weapon, one Jai wielded with mastery. And even a dragon fighter, the so-called night hunter, was not immune. The redhead stammered, "What? What was that monster?" Green corrected her, "He's not a monster, he's human." "If he's human," the redhead shot back, "then I'm just a lizard." Jai addressed the red hatchling directly. "From this day forward, you will live in my house, under my protection. I will grant you freedom and support whatever you desire." He was about to give her a warning, but Green cut in. "She's in shock. Let me calm her down first. We can explain everything to her later." Red flinched as Green suddenly hugged her. Green then shot Jai a playful wink, leaving him utterly speechless. He turned to Red. "From now on, your name is Yuya," but she just yelled, "I'm not in the mood for games." Meanwhile, the clone turned away from the chaotic scene. It reported back to the real Jai that the situation was resolved. At that very moment, deep within the Amazon rainforest, the real Jai stood beside Gold. He commended his clone's good work, promising to return soon. He knew Red was a brute. Convincing her would have been impossible for the clone alone. Sending Bomb with him was the right call. "Who were you just talking to?" Gold asked. "It was nothing," he replied, earning a suspicious glance. She snatched his smartwatch, slipping it onto her own wrist. Like most gold dragons, she craved attention, having lived one of her 6 lives as a famous celebrity. But the one dragon who outshone all others was the one who caused the greatest destruction. The glamorous life of fame always comes with a price. He suspected that was why she was hiding out here, in the middle of nowhere. Gold was captivated by the watch. A crisp, holographic screen projected above it. She'd never seen such technology in her previous life. He looked at her. "If your kind came to Earth for entertainment, why are you hiding here, instead of living among the humans?" This desolate wasteland was a waking nightmare, nothing but crawling bugs and ravenous beasts. Gold's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. How could a mere human know the dark secrets of her world? With a mysterious smile, he revealed the truth. The little green hatchling had been his informant all along. The puzzle pieces finally clicked into place. No wonder his aura carried the distinct scent of Green's magic. He leaned in closer, his gaze piercing right through her. Was this proud golden hatchling trembling before humanity? Had the mortal realm truly terrified her that much? She puffed up her chest, stubbornly refusing to show weakness. She wasn't exactly shaking in her boots, but her past encounters had left a bitter taste. She had walked among the mortal race once before, and it hadn't been a beautiful fairy tale. Their greedy, obsessive eyes had tracked her every move, creepy stalkers lingering endlessly in the shadows. It sent uncomfortable shivers down her spine just thinking about it. That lingering dread. That was the real reason she kept her distance from them. Then, he asked the most ridiculous question imaginable. Did she like bread? The majestic golden dragon blinked in absolute bewilderment. She was an ancient supreme being. Mortal sustenance meant absolutely nothing to her physiology. But Jay just smirked and snapped his fingers. A surge of overwhelming energy rippled through the air. He casually activated a rank S spatial void, a terrifying subdimension capable of swallowing entire cities whole. And what did he use this god-tier power for? To summon fresh baked goods. The sweet buttery aroma instantly cut through the tension. Her mighty dragon senses betrayed her in a heartbeat. Her nose twitched, and her golden eyes lit up like shooting stars. The scent was absolutely intoxicating. Was this human seriously offering her such divine treasures? She stared in awe at the mountain of pastries, fluffy donuts and warm golden blueberry egg tarts. Why on earth did he carry a royal bakery in his pocket? Jay extended his hand with an unshakable, confident gaze. He offered her a place by his side, promising that her long-lost sisters were already waiting for her. Under his absolute protection, no harm would ever reach her again. He coaxed her to embrace the joys of the human world, just like her dragon brethren were already doing. But she hesitated, her defensive walls shooting back up. Her mother's ancient warning echoed loudly in her mind. Never follow strange humans into the unknown. Knowing her ultimate weakness, he pulled out the heavy artillery. A colorful box of premium, irresistible macarons. Her legendary dragon pride crumbled instantly, Her eyes sparkled with absolute delight as she surrendered to the sweets. And just like that, the golden dragon was officially added to his system registry. Meanwhile, high above the bustling streets of Korea, inside Jay's luxurious penthouse fortress, Urim leaned against the balcony glass, practically dying of sheer boredom. She suddenly realized she had forgotten to update the system logs. Her expression darkened into a fierce, menacing scowl. The memories of Javier Gitae's terrifying threats flooded her mind. Just thinking about that overwhelming pressure made her blood boil. Fierce anger flared up inside her very soul. From the living room, Green sensed her distress and grew anxious. But before the heavy tension could escalate, the unmistakable sound of the front door clicking open shattered the silence. The master of the house had finally returned, and he had brought a very shiny golden guest with him. Gold looked around her spectacular new sanctuary. She stubbornly insisted she didn't just follow him for the food, but her cheeks were already stuffed with a savory sausage roll. She boldly proclaimed it was a culinary masterpiece, even outclassing the legendary delicacies of Ascalifa. Then, she finally took a bite of the delicate macaron. A shockwave of pure flavor exploded on her tongue. Her golden eyes widened in absolute blissful shock, the perfect crunch melting into divine sugary softness. To her dragon taste buds, this was a taste of absolute heaven. As Gold stood paralyzed by dessert, the ever-loyal Green rushed to the door, giving Jay a warm, wifely welcome. Gold's heart soared at the magical sight of her old friend. Green greeted her with a bright, gentle smile. The golden girl practically tackled her in a massive, emotional hug. Green lovingly patted her head, praising how beautifully she had grown. Tears of pure joy pricked at Gold's eyes. They had been separated for what felt like an endless eternity. The heavy, crushing ache of missing her sisters was finally washing away. She quickly interrogated Green about this mysterious human master. How long had she been staying in his lair? Green softly replied it had only been a few short days. But the biggest shock was yet to come. The fiery red dragon was hiding in this house too. Green eagerly nudged her forward to reunite with their fiery sister. Meanwhile, a dark presence materialized from the corners of the room. The loyal shadow assassin respectfully bowed before Geet. He nodded, praising the shadow for its flawless execution of orders. With a flick of his wrist, he dismissed it back into the darkness. Just then, Red sauntered into the living area. Her eyes locked with his, and she let out a loud, unapologetic click of her tongue. Gold exploded into a frenzy of pure, chaotic excitement. She fluttered around Red, chirping away like a noisy little duckling, bombarding her with endless questions about her well-being. But then her nose twitched, catching the sharp scent of smoke. Immediately, the little dragon started nagging her like a strict mother. Red's incredibly short patience snapped in record time. She ruthlessly clamped her hand over the loudmouth's face, instantly silencing the squawking golden chick in her tracks. A terrifying, blazing aura leaked from the older dragon. She threatened to rip her beak right off if she didn't shut up. Gold muffled out a protest, calling her a total bully. The chaotic reunion finally settled down in the living room. That was when Jay dropped a crucial, world-building question. What were their exact ages in human years? Green politely and softly stated she was 20. The bubbly Gold proudly puffed out her chest, claiming 10. But the stubborn Red crossed her arms in silent, moody defiance. Left with no choice, Jay simply declared her to be a rebellious 16. Gold fiercely puffed up her cheeks in blazing protest. Dragon maturation was completely different from fragile mortal biology. She demanded to be treated like the fierce predator she truly was, not some helpless, ignorant little human child. Suddenly, her keen ears caught onto something deeply suspicious. Why was he calling Red by the name Urim? Was it some sort of magical, modern disguise? Green smiled softly, revealing it was a special title bestowed by their master, and that she herself had been given the explosive name, Bomb. Gold's mind was completely blown into a million pieces. How could they accept titles before their sacred coming of age? In the dragon realm, a true name was a symbol of immense, life-altering power. It was an unbreakable bond woven by destiny itself. She crossed her arms, fiercely shaking her head in denial. There was absolutely no way she would accept such a casual human tradition. This naming business was way too suspicious to ignore. Using her brilliant dragon intellect, she smugly deduced her fate. Was he just going to lazily name her Ga? But Jay's voice carried a sudden, commanding weight. From this day forward, her name would be Yu Gal, a beautiful title representing the vibrant, changing season of autumn. Then, his sharp, omniscient gaze shifted to the pendant resting on her chest. He casually declared that the sleeping soul inside would be called Ghoul. The dragons froze in absolute, breath-stealing shock. How could a mere mortal sense the ancient aura of Blue's slumbering egg? He already knew absolutely everything. The disguise magic, the impending birth of a new dragon queen. Gold squinted at him, her intense suspicion growing by the second. For a fragile human, his knowledge of the supernatural was dangerously profound. Her insatiable curiosity burned like an uncontrollable wildfire. She practically demanded to know the dark secrets behind his wisdom. but Jay simply waved her off with a cold, untouchable aura. That was a hidden truth far beyond their current pay grade. His playful demeanor vanished, replaced by a suffocating, kingly pressure. He established one absolute, unbreakable law of the house. They could indulge in all the mortal pleasures they desired, but they were strictly forbidden from ever stepping outside his protective barrier. Gold tilted her head, thoroughly confused by the heavy restriction. His eyes flashed with a possessive, overwhelming dominance. They were never to hide their true selves from his all-seeing gaze. Every bit of their newfound freedom would remain firmly locked within his absolute control. Red leaned heavily against her palm, rolling her eyes to the very heavens. This controlling, dictatorial monologue was practically putting her to sleep. The absolute, maddening audacity of this human was exhausting. She spat out a venomous, cuttingly sarcastic remark, her fiery irritation radiating through the entire room like a heat wave. She wasn't about to just bow down to his strict rules without a fight. The sudden spike in tension made everyone turn and stare at the rebellious teen, but Green expertly shattered the heavy, suffocating atmosphere. She sprang to her feet, her face glowing with pure, unadulterated excitement. The promise of exploring the nearby human world was calling her name. She rallied her mighty dragon sisters for a grand shopping expedition. If this penthouse was their new lair, they needed to adapt to the era. It was time to secure mortal identities and hoard essential daily supplies. Gold's adventurous spirit ignited into a blazing inferno. But Red scoffed at the utterly ridiculous fantasy. It was a terrible, mocking joke. How were a bunch of broke mythical beasts supposed to buy anything in this world? With a nonchalant shrug, Jay tossed his sleek black wallet straight to Green. A legendary artifact filled with limitless mortal currency. He flashed a confident smirk, telling them to wipe away their worldly worries. Their only mission was to unleash chaos and have an absolute blast. Green bowed with profound gratitude, carefully asking about their spending limits. The master's reply was casually devastating to his future bank account. They had absolute, unrestricted access to his entire fortune. With that god-tier permission granted, the dragon trio marched out the door. Little did he know the terrifying financial apocalypse he had just unleashed. His phone screen suddenly lit up like a warning beacon. A relentless barrage of withdrawal notifications flooded the system. It started with small, innocent bites, but quickly evolved into catastrophic, mountain-shattering expenses. The notifications kept flooding in, until the final death blow arrived. A glaring system warning flashed across the screen. Credit limit fully exceeded. GT just stared at his phone, rendered absolutely, utterly speechless. The girls, however, were radiating absolute delight. Gold had hauled in a massive mountain of stylish clothes, while Red casually stood there, holding a literal weapon of destruction. Green gently handed back his drained wallet. She bowed her head deeply, apologizing for their monstrous shopping spree. She confessed she wanted to buy him some clothes too, but the maxed-out card had brutally crushed that dream. With a heavy sigh, he brushed it off, telling her it was completely fine. But before he could process the damage, Gold eagerly demanded his attention. She dramatically spun around in her brand-new outfit. Her smile was blindingly bright, practically begging for a sweet compliment, bursting with pride over her magical makeover. She confessed to sweeping the stores simply because things looked cute. And for the grand finale, she proudly flashed her sleek new smartwatch, an exact, flawless match to the one he wore. The moment he praised her gorgeous new look, her face lit up like a supernova. She thanked him sweetly, declaring him the absolute best in the world. But lingering in the background, Red was glaring with unmistakable, burning jealousy. Refusing to be overshadowed, Red marched right up. She casually muttered that she bought the exact same watch, though her painfully stiff and awkward posture completely exposed her true feelings. Meanwhile, slightly out of focus, Gold was still bouncing off the walls with endless energy, already planning her next spectacular fashion show. Red then proudly presented her gleaming new blade, a necessary replacement for her recently shattered weapon. When he calmly asked if it suited her taste, he couldn't help but notice it was actually a remarkably high-tier choice. Hearing his genuine approval, a massive wave of relief washed over her, thankful she hadn't wasted money on rusty trash. Suddenly, Gold dashed toward Red like a missile, wildly waving a shopping bag and announcing she had bought matching outfits for them both. Pure, unfiltered panic struck Red's face. She bolted away like a frightened deer, screaming at the top of her lungs that she didn't want any frilly clothes. The entire room instantly descended into glorious, beautiful chaos. Watching the madness unfold, Bomb offered a soft, knowing smile. She explained that Yoram was just terrible with her emotions, but deep down, she was incredibly grateful. Hearing those words, a gentle wave of relief washed over Jitae. But then, his sharp gaze shifted. He noticed Bomb's hands were completely empty. Did she really return from a massive, limitless shopping trip without snagging a single treasure for herself? With a serene, angelic smile, she pointed toward the center table. Resting quietly, there was a simple, humble, potted plant. She softly explained the profound joy of nurturing life, though the deep philosophical sentiment clearly flew right over his head, her eyes filled with gentle, radiant warmth. She told him that one day, it would bloom into beautiful, vibrant flowers, becoming a precious memory they could hold on to forever. Suddenly, a spark of realization flashed in her eyes. The peaceful atmosphere instantly shifted as she remembered a critically important question. She knew true human entertainment wasn't just about endless snacks and sweet drinks. Was there a way to experience the full, authentic human life while staying safely under his watchful eye? Without a second of hesitation, he revealed that there absolutely was. He dropped the ultimate, world-shattering bombshell. How about experiencing actual school life? With a confident smirk, he presented the official application forms for the prestigious Lair Academy city. At that exact terrifying moment, Yoram and Ga peeked around the corner, their eyes widened to the size of saucers, completely paralyzed by the sudden, horrifying mention of school. Fast forward to the next day, the exhausted hatchlings dragged their heavy bodies back home. Yoram looked completely drained of her life force after enduring the grueling, endless academy interviews. Glancing around the quiet room, Bom wondered where Jitae had vanished to. Ga suddenly slumped down onto the floor, a dark, heavy cloud of gloom hanging over her head. A terrifying, heart-crushing scenario had haunted her mind. What if the others passed with flying colors, while she alone tasted the bitter ashes of failure? The agonizing thought of being left behind while they marched into Lair Academy was soul-crushing. But Yoram quickly snapped at her, completely annoyed by this endless, exhausting spiral of doom and gloom. Honestly, at this exact moment, Ga just wanted someone to forcefully stuff her cheeks with sweet, comforting bread to make the crippling anxiety magically disappear. Her confidence had plummeted to rock bottom. She genuinely believed her endless, monstrous appetite would be the exact reason she failed. Just then, Jitae finally stepped through the door, warmly welcoming them back after their brutal trial. Tears bursting forth like a broken dam, Ga threw herself directly into his arms. She sobbed endlessly about her doomed, tragic interview, but he gently patted her head, assuring her that absolute failure simply wasn't in her destiny. Bom tilted her head with deep curiosity, asking where he had sneaked off to. In response, he raised a mysterious paper bag with a triumphant, confident grin. He had embarked on a special, top-secret mission. Ga's incredibly powerful nose immediately twitched. A heavenly, divine aroma was leaking from the bag, the moment he declared it was her ultimate favorite thing in the world. Her teary eyes practically exploded with dazzling, starry sparkles. She desperately guessed. Was it fresh bakery bread? Or maybe those delicate, sugary macarons? He shook his head with a mysterious smile. This was something infinitely, unbelievably better. A sudden, glamorous flashback hit. Back in her glorious, dazzling idol days, she was the legendary pop sensation known as Baby Yellow, and she had proudly graced the set of the famous Tonight Dinner show. When the charismatic host asked if she understood the show's concept, she nodded with a bright, professional smile. It was the ultimate dream gig, spilling juicy tea while stuffing her face with absolute culinary masterpieces. Master chefs stood by at the ready, prepared to forge culinary magic on command. Then came the ultimate, million-dollar question. What was this divine idol's favorite food in the entire universe? The host playfully teased her. Rumor had it she sustained her flawless beauty purely on morning dew. She burst into bubbly, charming laughter, humbly reminding them that even top-tier idols needed real human food to survive. Her mind raced through a towering mountain of delicacies, until she landed on the undisputed, heavyweight champion of comfort food, the crispy, glorious golden perfection of Korean fried chicken. Snapping aggressively back to reality, a literal waterfall of drool escaped her lips as the majestic, golden dish was placed before her. The heavenly, garlic-infused aroma was downright intoxicating, practically guaranteeing a legendary flavor explosion. Yoram narrowed her eyes into a fierce glare, completely baffled by this ridiculous contradiction. How on earth could she declare this her absolute favorite food, when she had literally never eaten a single bite of it in her life? Ga puffed out her chest with absolute, unshakable certainty. From this glorious day forward, it was destined by the heavens to be her number one. Yoram just scoffed loudly, dismissing it as nothing more than ordinary, deep-fried bird. Even so, her betraying stomach secretly admitted the smell was absolutely divine. Suddenly, Jitae's ringing phone shattered the peaceful atmosphere, forcing him to quickly step out into the hallway. Bom's incredibly sharp eyes tracked his subtle movements. She softly called out, asking if he was seriously going to skip this legendary feast. He gently waved them off, giving them the ultimate green light to dive into the crispy heaven. She tried to insist that he stay, but he had already vanished like a ghost through the doorway, clicking the answer button with a serious expression. He was greeted by an unexpected high-level caller, the Lair Academy admissions office. The voice on the line sounded incredibly tense. They reported a rather significant, unexpected issue regarding the earlier interview sessions. Jitae's eyes narrowed dangerously, demanding to know exactly what had gone wrong. The high-ranking official hesitated, clearly thrown completely off guard. They were absolutely undeniably stunned that the legendary bomb hadn't already broken the shocking news herself. Keeping his tone utterly cold and flat, Jitae confirmed he was completely in the dark, taking a deep, shaky breath. The official dropped a massive, earth-shattering revelation. Bomb had effortlessly crushed the brutal interview with a flawless, perfect score. The entire elite evaluation panel was left utterly speechless by her sheer brilliance. In fact, her performance was so terrifyingly perfect. They were officially offering her the absolute highest honor, representative student for the grand entrance ceremony. Jitae's stoic eyes widened just a fraction of an inch. The massive weight of the situation finally settled in. He calmly, yet firmly, asked for absolute confirmation. Was this prestigious, historic offer aimed directly at her? A staff member reported that the interviewers were ecstatic, making her direct offers on the spot. The only problem was that she rejected every single one. Believing it was a golden opportunity, they pleaded with him, hoping he could convince her to reconsider. But he refused, stating that her decision was his own. Before the staff could argue, he cut the connection, ending the matter. Bomb found him on the balcony, her voice cutting through the silence. "Was that about Green?" she asked. "It's Bomb," he corrected her calmly. She scoffed at the cringy name, annoyed that they were playing house at their age. "What are you trying to say?" he asked. She paused, then aimed her real question. "Why send us to Lair?" His answer was simple. "To give you all what you want." But she shot back. "What I want is a real fight." "Are there strong opponents there?" she pressed. He replied, "The best from around the world are gathered there. There must be." She sneered that they were all just kids. He pointed out that she was a kid too. His words struck a nerve, and Red's face tightened with irritation. Flicking her cigarette away, she faced him. "Fight me." She knew he was powerful, but she had to know the true depths of his strength. "If you want my loyalty," she challenged, "show me what you're capable of." He met her fiery gaze and flatly refused. "Just go inside and eat," he dismissed her. Her challenge ignored, she spat, "Boring." But he remained completely unfazed. His indifference finally shattered her composure. She threw up a middle finger, cursing him out. Just then, Gall appeared, telling her to stop, and offered her a piece of chicken. Bomb refused to eat, so Gall simply shoved it into her mouth. In an instant, her eyes lit up with disbelief. It was incredible. On the Island of Abundance sits Lair, an educational institution unlike any other in the entire world. It is a school dedicated to training superhumans, honing their diverse blessings and extraordinary abilities. But the cadets who walked its halls were the children of CEOs, the heirs of royal families, and certified geniuses. For this reason, the academy constantly faced criticism for its rigid, hierarchical structure. Gall wandered the campus, her eyes sparkling with pure wonder, completely captivated by the magnificent school. Bomb walked calmly beside her, watching Gall's unfiltered amazement. The rumors were true. This place was for nobles and the super rich. It led Gall to a wild conclusion. "Do you think Jai is the secret son of some CEO? Especially since he didn't even flinch at the massive cost." Bomb had to agree. "He certainly has that aura." Bomb let out a sigh of relief that they'd all been accepted. Gall beamed, admitting she thought she would fail, then asked, "Hey, where are Guy and Yoram?" Bomb informed her that Yoram was at the Blue Dragon School for her practical exam, with Guy attending as her chaperone. "A chaperone?" Gall asked. Bomb explained it's a requirement for adults to escort students, to keep the more immature superhumans from causing chaos. Gall instantly imagined Yoram running wild and knew she'd be an absolute menace without a keeper. But why does she need another test? Bomb explained that Yoram's chosen course requires cadets to face each other in a live duel. Gall's eyes lit up, eager to watch the fight, but Bomb had already checked. "We're not allowed to go." Gall's head spun with confusion. "Why not?" Bomb glanced at the people staring at them and sighed. "It would be weird if we all showed up." It seemed their striking appearances were already making them the center of everyone's attention. Meanwhile, at the Blue Dragon School's Kangtian Pavilion, duels were already underway with wooden swords. Fights raged across multiple stages as chaperones watched from the stands. While others screamed for their students, Guy observed in silence. A man approached the frantic crowd, his voice calm. "I understand the excitement," he began. "But please, try to be calm. You are only causing more anxiety for the future cadets." The chaperones turned, wondering who he was. "My apologies," he said with a slight bow. "I am Weewon, the head professor of the Blue Dragon School. It is a pleasure to meet you all." Instantly, the chaperones' attitudes shifted. and they greeted him with newfound respect. They whispered in awe of his dignified aura. He wasn't just skilled and wealthy, he was a living hero from the Great War. Guy watched him for a moment, until the announcer's voice boomed. Number 124 versus number 7. Below, holding her sword, stood Yoram. A wicked grin spread across her face. Now, I hope this gets interesting. Her opponent was a blonde girl with piercing blue eyes. If this is boring, I'm just leaving, Yoram announced to no one in particular. The crowd buzzed, placing their bets. They're both gorgeous, one student said, but the redhead is my type. His friend smacked him. Idiot. The question is, who will win? He then answered, it has to be Sofia Vorova. She was in the RIL before she even got here. The RIL. Russia's infamous Hunter Special Task Force, a legendary unit forged in the crucible of the Great War. They were notorious for their brutal training methods, a regimen that was said to be closer to torture. From the stands, Sofia's chaperone screamed, "Remember, Sofia! The higher-ups have great expectations for you!" Her overly enthusiastic chaperone was completely losing his mind, screaming his lungs out from the restricted zone. Sofia kept her gaze fixed forward, wearing a mask of absolute indifference. But beneath that icy exterior, she was dying of sheer embarrassment. Yoram tilted her head with a mocking smirk, noting just how desperate her daddy appeared. She lazily suggested that the blonde should just forfeit and run back into his waiting arms. With a wicked sneer, she called her a papa's boy, before quickly correcting herself to say papa's little girl. Sofia's eyes flashed with lethal intent as she warned the redhead to shut her mouth, promising that another word would guarantee her death. Instead of backing down, Yoram's smile only grew wider as she dared her to try. A chilling aura swept through the arena, sending shivers down the spines of the observing students. This was the crushing pressure expected from an RIL elite, but looking at the crimson-haired challenger, they realized she was just as utterly terrifying. Participants number 124 and 7 were ordered to take their battle stances. Sofia raised her bare fists, facing Yoram's gripped wooden blade, and the duel officially began. Sofia exploded forward like a cannonball. Yoram widened her eyes at the blinding velocity, barely managing to catch the incoming strike as she praised the blonde's impressive momentum. In a flash, the wooden sword sliced through the air. Sofia seamlessly ducked beneath the whistling blade, countering with a vicious sweeping kick that nearly took the redhead's head off. Relying on pure animal instinct, Yoram twisted her body at the last possible second. She dodged the lethal impact, but the sheer wind pressure shredded the fabric across her stomach. Annoyance flickered across her face over the ruined clothing. Meanwhile, Sofia shifted her footwork, vanishing like a phantom to instantly erase the distance between them. Moving like water, Yoram slipped past a barrage of devastating hooks, sprinting directly toward the arena's boundary. Stepping off the chain-link wall, she launched herself back into the sky like a loaded spring. Sofia firmly planted her feet in the absolute center, bracing for the impact. Descending like a meteor, Yoram raised her weapon for a bone-crushing strike. A maniacal grin stretched across the redhead's face, absolutely drunk on the thrill of battle. Sofia crossed her forearms to absorb the blow, but the overwhelming force shattered her bones with a sickening crack. Gritting her teeth so hard her gums bled, the blonde desperately fought through the agonizing pain. Seeing this, Yoram's battle lust reached its absolute peak. Another merciless swing rained down, forcing the crippled elite to maintain her desperate guard. Rebounding from the heavy impact, Yoram landed flawlessly and instantly pivoted to unleash her next combo. She openly mocked her opponent's foolishness. Sofia's eyes trembled, completely overwhelmed by the redhead's unpredictable rhythm. Tilting her head with a predatory smirk, Yoram's gaze burned with absolute madness. Her taunting voice echoed through the ring, revealing that this entire exchange was merely a warm-up. The time for playing around was over. She closed in like a lightning bolt, bringing her weapon down in a devastating smash. The sheer brutality of the strike shook the entire floor. Sofia was launched like a rag doll against the steel fencing, coughing up a puddle of dark blood. The victorious redhead stepped forward, leveling her wooden blade right at the defeated girl's throat. Cold sweat poured down the blonde's terrified face, just as the announcer officially declared participant 124 the winner. Yoram sneered at the pathetic display, mocking her for acting tough when the battle was incredibly boring. Absolute humiliation crushed Sofia's pride into dust. Turning her back on the fallen loser, Yoram strolled away, scoffing at the pathetic standard of these supposed global elites. Medical staff and the panicked chaperone scrambled into the arena, while the viewing gallery descended into absolute shock over the favored candidate's devastating loss. It was an unbelievable outcome, especially since the opening clash had felt like an evenly matched war. But sharp-eyed spectators quickly pointed out the terrifying truth. The crimson-haired monster did not have a single scratch on her. She had been toying with her prey the entire time, and whispers began to flood the stands. The crowd furiously debated whether the mysterious redhead was simply a hidden master or if the hyped-up blonde was nothing but a fraud. Rumors spread that she only got her prestigious RIL status because of her pretty face rather than actual combat prowess. Cruel laughter echoed through the hall as they branded her a worthless nobody. Every single mocking word pierced through her ears, drowning her heart in a suffocating ocean of despair. The medic wrapped up the emergency treatment, assuring her guardian that the worst was over. But the blonde slowly clenched her unbroken hand. Her entire body shook with demonic fury as she whispered that this nightmare was far from over. Her escort let out a heavy sigh, offering hollow words of comfort that she had at least put up a decent fight. He bluntly stated the harsh reality. In her current pathetic state, she stood zero chance against that monstrous kid. Looking down at her battered form, he coldly admitted his absolute disappointment. Her trembling gaze slowly drifted toward the gleaming dagger secured at his waist, and her expression twisted into a mask of pure, unhinged desperation. Oblivious to her dark thoughts, he continued his lecture, claiming that encountering an impassable wall today was a blessing in disguise. After all, crushing defeats are what forge true strength. He was busy delivering his grand speech until the terrified nurse interrupted his rambling, stammering that his charge had suddenly vanished. Confusion washed over his face, but as he spun around, his blood ran cold. Sophia was already marching toward the arena, her fingers tightly wrapped around his stolen military blade. Madness dripped from her voice as she denied her defeat, convincing herself she was merely caught off balance. Swirling blue mana began to coat the stolen dagger as she blindly assured everyone that she was perfectly fine. Screaming at the retreating redhead to face her, she boldly declared the match was not over. In a burst of desperate speed, she completely vanished. Materializing like a vengeful ghost, she drove the mana-infused blade straight into Uram's unguarded back. Watching from the stands, Jay's eyes turned as cold as the abyss. The sudden, cowardly strike caught Uram completely by surprise, forcing a harsh string of curses from her lips. Murderous intent poured from the disgraced elite. The audience watched in sheer, paralyzed horror. A deathly silence suffocated the entire stadium, while Jay remained glued to his seat, his intense scowl radiating pure disappointment. The explosive force behind the treacherous backstab launched both girls violently out of the designated combat zone, sending them crashing hard onto the concrete floor. The lethal blade had ripped straight through flesh and bone, jutting grotesquely out of the redhead's chest. Yet, instead of dying, a demonic grin crept across Uram's face. She found it absolutely hilarious that this loser wanted to play for keeps. But the bloodlust was not satisfied just yet. Sophia charged in to deliver a fatal punch to her victim's skull. Shrugging off the massive wound, Uram smoothly tilted her head to let the fist graze past her ear. Moving with the speed of a predator, she fiercely coiled her fingers into the attacker's flowing blonde hair. An agonizing groan escaped Sophia's throat as her scalp felt like it was being ripped apart. Clenching her free hand into an unbreakable fist, Uram coldly whispered her death sentence. A devastating hook instantly shattered the blonde's arrogant face. But the crimson-haired demon was only getting started. A merciless storm of absolute carnage rained down. Blood erupted like a grisly crimson fountain with every sickening impact. The terrified spectators began to panic, screaming for anyone to intervene before a murder happened right before their eyes. A devastating blow connected. The sheer force sent Sophia rocketing toward the spectator stands. She crashed into the crowd like a meteor, scattering students like bowling pins. Sophia lay motionless, bathed in her own blood. But Uram's fury was far from quenched. Snatching up the fallen blade, she coldly declared that this nightmare was not over. An eye for an eye! She raised the weapon to deliver the exact same torment she had suffered. But before the steel could fall, an iron grip locked around her wrist. Sophia's guardian bellowed at the young girl to halt her assault. Uram thrashed against his hold, her rage boiling over. Sensing the escalating danger, Wuan instantly barked orders at the Academy mages to deploy an overlap space. The entrance exams ground to a complete halt. Mana flared around the arena as the spellcasters rapidly erected the dimensional barrier, trapping the enraged Uram and the towering chaperone dead in the center. The dagger clattered against the ground. Uram screamed at the top of her lungs. Why was she the only one being condemned when that treacherous brat had ambushed her first? The guardian glared down at her. He demanded to know if a mere scratch justified an attempted murder. Uram scoffed at his hypocrisy. Was she supposed to just sit back and die like a helpless prey? But the man fired back. With her overwhelming talent, subduing Sophia without lethal force should have been child's play. His twisted logic only fueled her anger. With a venomous glare, she spat that if he cared so much, he should have actually taught his precious daughter some basic manners. Tensions were at a breaking point. Wuan stepped into the isolated dimension, desperately trying to defuse the ticking time bomb between them. He quickly informed the bleeding girl that the faculty was already searching for her sponsor. He pleaded with her to get her wounds healed, but the blazing inferno of her pride absolutely refused to back down. The official completely understood her burning frustration. After all, he had witnessed the entire treacherous ambush with his own eyes. However, watching a promising talent throw away her future was something he could not allow. His cryptic warning made Urim pause in confusion. He laid out the grim reality. Pushing this blood feud any further would tie his hands entirely, and the collateral damage could completely destroy her family name. The heavy weight of his words finally extinguished her reckless fury. Leaning in close, he whispered the name of the prestigious Yu household. He was well aware that her siblings' futures at this academy were also hanging in the balance. A single mistake today could shatter her family's honor forever, a burden she would carry for the rest of her life. Wuan motioned for her to stand down until her protector arrived. But before another word could leave his lips, a chillingly calm voice echoed through the space. There would be no waiting. The dimensional barrier rippled. Jai casually strolled into the restricted zone, his mere presence suffocating the room. He coldly ordered the chaperone to step away from his wounded ward and take this argument outside like a real man. A heavy silence dropped over the arena. Urim and Wuan stood completely paralyzed, their minds failing to process the sheer audacity of this newcomer. The tension was absolutely suffocating. Unable to form a single word, the young girl simply bit her lip, desperately trying to keep her surging emotions in check. The battlefield soon shifted to the negotiation table. Inside his private office, Wuan poured cups of premium Taiwanese oolong tea for the two towering figures. A delicate brew meant to soothe boiling tempers. The official's eyes darted toward Jai. Anyone who could effortlessly bypass a high-tier spatial barrier was undeniably an elite ranker of monstrous power. Yet, this terrifying powerhouse and his lineage were complete ghosts in the underworld. Wuan etched the man's face into his memory, swearing to dig up his hidden origins. Taking his seat, the moderator sighed, completely lost on how to navigate this political minefield. He offered a formal apology for the Academy's oversight, praising the heavens that no fatal casualties had occurred. Breaking the ice, he announced that the young swordswoman had already been cleared from the medical wing. Meanwhile, Sophia was a pathetic sight to behold. Wrapped in white bandages on a cold hospital bed, she glared at the ceiling, absolutely devastated by her humiliating defeat. Back in the office, the official carefully suggested sweeping this ugly incident under the rug. Since the two prodigies were destined to cross paths at the prestigious Blue Dragon Academy, letting this bad blood fester would only lead to disaster. It was time to bury the hatchet. If the heavyweights in the room could shake hands, he would personally erase the paperwork. Taking the out, Sophia's father offered a shallow apology for his child's treacherous opening strike. He proudly declared himself as Mikhailov. With a dismissive wave, he blamed the assassination attempt on mere youthful indiscretion and a temporary loss of emotional control. The so-called sincere apology hung in the air, only to be brutally shot down. Jai's eyes turned as cold as absolute zero. He bluntly refused the pathetic excuse, making the air in the room instantly drop in temperature. The true monster in the room finally bared his fangs. Why on earth would he accept an apology from someone who was not even the one swinging the blade? Mikhailov's pride was deeply wounded. He warned the insolent upstart to show some professional courtesy between noble sponsors. Did this nobody even comprehend the titanic background he was messing with? A mocking smirk crept onto Jai's face. They were practically standing in two different worlds. He ruthlessly mocked the man, questioning if shifting the blame was the traditional apology of his mighty homeland. Mikhailov's aura began to leak. He slammed his hand on the table, demanding to know if this lunatic actually wanted him to drag a half-dead child out of her hospital bed. Without missing a beat, Jai's answer was a deadpan, chilling yes. That single word was like throwing gasoline on a blazing inferno. As Wuan desperately tried to contain the Russian giant's fury, Jai calmly dropped another bombshell. His anger had absolutely nothing to do with the brat's cheap trick. His killing intent slowly leaked out. He was simply dying to know why a supposed high ranker sat back and watched as his little princess charged at another student with a lethal weapon. The hulking guardian roared that the attack was totally unprecedented. His veins were bulging as his face flushed crimson with unbridled rage. But Jai simply clicked his tongue, calling out the downright pathetic excuse for what it was. His words cut deeper than any sword. Was the great noble truly not ashamed of using his own daughter as a human shield to cover up his tragic lack of reflexes? Snap! The thread of reason broke. Mikhailov lunged across the table, viciously seizing Jai by the collar. He snarled that the arrogant punk had just crossed a fatal line. A terrifying wave of mana violently erupted from the giant's body. He promised to crush this nobody with the full, overwhelming might of the RIL faction. To him, Jai was just a nameless insect begging to be squashed. But in the blink of an eye, the tyrant's menacing sneer dissolved into absolute horror. There, resting effortlessly in Jai's hand, was Mikhailov's own personal dagger, as the mysterious man casually praised its lethal edge. Spinning the blade like a toy, Jai murmured that if his disciple had lacked the skills, this very weapon would have ended her life. The giant stumbled back, stammering in sheer disbelief at when the theft had occurred. Jai flashed a predatory smile. His holster was practically useless, which explained exactly how a mere child managed to snatch his weapon without him noticing. Cold sweat drenched Mikhailov's spine. His martial senses had been pushed to their absolute limits, yet this phantom had stolen his blade right from under his nose. The true power gap was devastatingly clear. Gyat's warning was ice cold. Avoid empty alleyways. A dagger whistled through the air, slamming into the table, splintering the wood right beside Mikov's foot. Mikov froze solid. His eyes bulged as a cold sweat drenched his skin. Raw shock and terror seized him in an instant. Their business concluded, Gyat was gone, but Mikov remained paralyzed by fear, his face a pale, stiff mask. Wuan wore the exact same look of dread. A nervous sigh finally escaped Wuan as the reality of the threat sank in. When Gyat stepped out of the office, he found Yuri waiting for him. He asked gently, "Are you all right?" She brushed it off. "It's just a scratch. Red dragons are tough to kill." "I'm glad to hear that," he replied. She looked at him, her expression serious. "Do you also think I was in the wrong?" She confessed, her voice lowering. "I can't stop wondering if it really was my fault. It makes me so angry," she admitted, "but a part of me feels like I should have just been the bigger person." He stopped her. "You did well." His next words were chilling. "Next time, just kill her where there are no witnesses." She watched him start to walk away, his words echoing. A sigh of pure relief escaped her, followed by a bright smile. She jogged to catch up, declaring, "Don't you dare regret saying that. I'm the one who told you to do it." His reply was a simple, unwavering, "Okay." Then Gyat added, "When you get home, pack your things immediately." She blinked in confusion. "Why? Are we going somewhere?" "You're moving into the lair," he stated as a matter of fact. Realization dawned in her eyes. The dorms! She could already imagine that little chicklet of hers chirping with pure joy. But out of nowhere, a voice called Gyat's name. It was Wuan. "Could I have a moment?" he requested. Gyat thought their discussion was over. "There's something else I wish to discuss," Wuan insisted, "and I would like Yuri to hear this as well." Yuri sighed, bracing for another lecture. "It won't be nagging," he clarified smoothly. "In fact, I'm offering you a golden opportunity." His eyes gleamed with ambition. "Have you ever considered becoming the freshman representative for the Blue Dragon School?" He promised her the world, being the face of the school, a full scholarship, powerful artifacts, and even media appearances. Gyat's eyes narrowed. "What a sudden proposition. Are you sure you have the authority to make such an offer?" "Oh, don't you worry about that," Wuan said with a dismissive wave. "As it happens, Vice Principal Manam Jun is a very close friend of mine." The moment that name was spoken, Gyat's expression turned grim. "Consider it," Wuan urged. "An opportunity like this won't come twice." Gyat's mind raced. Of course they were friends. After all, they were both demonic humans. Demonic humans. Unlike superhumans who take on blessings, they are twisted beings who embrace the void. They are driven by an insatiable craving for blind rage and killing intent. A lust for destruction aimed at all of humanity. Because of these very creatures, the world once faced utter annihilation. In both his first and second regressions, demonic humans had stolen everything precious from him. That is why he had imagined killing Wuan countless times since they first met. But he always held back. Because Wuan's destiny was to die bearing the weight of far greater sins, Gyat masked his murderous intent. "I understand your proposal," he said evenly, "but the most important factor here is what she thinks. I am simply her guardian." Wuan agreed with a practiced smile. "You're absolutely right. It is ultimately Yuri's decision." He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "The Blue Dragon School will undergo many changes from now on. I want you to be the face of that change, especially at the year-end event. Please, help me draw our future together." Her answer was blunt. "I don't want to." Wuan was dumbfounded. "I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly?" "You heard me just fine," she replied flatly. She then turned to Gyat. "Let's go home. You said I needed to pack my bags, right?" Wuan was completely lost. "Then why did you even show up for the interview?" She replied casually. "I was just lying on my bed, feeling bored." He stared. And then I felt like fighting someone," she finished. A tight, strained smile stretched across Wuan's face, her answer throwing him completely off balance. His gaze flickered to the window below. "Perhaps you should take a look down there." A swarm of people holding cameras had gathered. Yuri squinted at the crowd. "Are those reporters?" "They are," he confirmed, his tone shifting. "They came to hear opinions on today's incident, and they're waiting for my statement on the matter." The threat was clear. Your entire life in the lair depends on what I say next. But she didn't even flinch. Whatever. Goodbye. The audacity made him laugh, a cold and bitter sound. As he watched them leave, his face twisted into a snarl. "I hope you don't regret this," he muttered. The moment Yuri stepped outside, the reporters descended on her like a pack of wolves, shouting questions from every direction. Microphones were shoved in her face as camera flashes blinded her. She was instantly taken aback by the overwhelming chaos. "Your interview clip is going viral across all Korean internet communities," one reporter yelled. "Did you intentionally go rampant to get attention and revive your family name?" Another accused. The questions kept coming, each one sharper than the last. Annoyance boiled inside her. Just then, Jitae stepped between her and the mob, his voice cutting through the noise. "That's enough. Stop burdening an injured child." She held up a hand to stop him. If the world wanted a show, she was ready to give them an unforgettable one. Snatching the voice recorder right out of the reporter's hand, Yoram held it close. A devilish, utterly confident smirk played on her lips. Her eyes danced with the thrill of pure chaos. And then, with perfect comedic timing, she dropped the ultimate bombshell and literally announced, "Sex." Sunlight poured over the magnificent dorms hidden within the lair. Ga was completely starstruck. Their new home was absolutely massive. She bolted straight to the second floor, hunting for the perfect spot. But alas, Yoram had already marked her territory on the master bedroom. Was this luxurious paradise really theirs? As she pushed open the door, her eyes sparkled with absolute delight at the gorgeous interior. A giant, fluffy bed, a top-tier flat-screen television, and beautiful natural sunlight. She instantly claimed this haven as her own. But suddenly, Yoram casually leaned over the balcony. She declared it the perfect smoking spot and ruthlessly tried to steal it. Ga immediately protested. She called dibs first. Besides, hadn't Yoram just demanded the biggest room down the hall? Yoram just listened to her frantic yapping with an amused smile. Eventually, poor Ga surrendered the room. Yoram patted her head, praising her like a good little puppy. Meanwhile, Bomb was gently misting the blue dragon egg. She softly whispered greetings to the unborn baby. Ga peeked in, utterly confused by the sudden shower time. Bomb smiled, explaining that water is a blue dragon's favorite element. As hatching time approached, the polymorph spell wore off, meaning it could no longer be hidden as a simple necklace. Changing the subject, Bomb brought up the swirling gossip. Yoram was the only thing anyone in the lair was talking about. Jai sighed inwardly. That chaotic interview from a few days ago had definitely blown up the internet. He pulled up the viral clip on his smartwatch. The moment Yoram dropped that infamous word, Bomb quickly covered the egg, whispering that babies shouldn't hear such things. Innocent little Ga blinked in confusion. Why was everyone making such a massive fuss? She tilted her head and genuinely asked what the word meant. A wickedly playful smirk crept across Yoram's face. She leaned in, asking if she really wanted the juicy details. Ga eagerly nodded, asking if Yoram was an expert. Oh, she definitely knew. Yoram announced it was high time their little chick learned about the birds and the bees. Seeing that villainous grin, Ga instantly regretted her curiosity. She nervously backed away. Her mother had always warned her that curiosity killed the cat, and some things were better left unknown. But Yoram's inner maniac was fully unleashed. She called her babe with a wicked cackle, declaring that escaping was no longer an option. She cornered her prey, ready to drop forbidden knowledge. Ga desperately clamped her hands over her ears, screaming that she wanted to stay innocent. Yoram effortlessly pinned her hands down. Defeated, Ga shot a desperate pleading, "Look at Jai." But our stoic male lead simply looked away, completely ignoring the chaos. To make matters even funnier, Bomb quietly slipped a pair of headphones over the dragon egg. This conversation was definitely rated mature. The next morning brought peaceful silence. Yoram was dead to the world, snoring softly. Suddenly, frantic footsteps thundered up the staircase. Ga violently slammed the door open. She screamed that an absolute emergency had occurred. Yoram groaned, blinking through her heavy sleep paralysis. She grumbled, asking what could possibly be so urgent. She had pulled a hardcore all-nighter. Suspicious, Ga immediately interrogated her about her late-night activities. With a shameless smirk, Yoram boldly confessed she had been watching adult videos. Ga froze, completely stunned into silence, before shaking her head and remembering the real crisis. Yoram threatened to end her life if this wasn't actually important. But as she stepped outside, she froze. Why was the entire household gathered in the living room? Bomb turned with shining eyes. The blue dragon was finally hatching. A tiny, profound crack spider-webbed across the shell. Everyone held their breath, witnessing the miracle of life. But for Jai, this scene triggered a dark, haunting memory. In his past life, birth wasn't a miracle. He remembered a desperate mother offering her child to him, begging for salvation that came too late. That fragile soul had perished the moment it took its first breath, just another tragic casualty in a world already swallowed by absolute despair. The air had been choked with ash, the hospital reduced to burning rubble, and Jai had stood there, an emotionless statue staring down at a lifeless infant. It was a soul-crushing nightmare he had fought to bury deep within. He thought those ghosts would never return. Yet, watching this egg tremble brought the shadows creeping back. Yoram's eyes widened, a soft gasp escaping her lips. A tiny, translucent claw pierced through the shell. Next came delicate wings, and finally, an incredibly precious little head popped out. Bomb's voice trembled with absolute warmth as she welcomed the newborn to the world. This beautiful little miracle would now be known as Gule. They carefully bundled the baby in soft blankets, wiping away the fluid. Watching Bomb's expert, gentle hands, Ga curiously asked how she knew exactly what to do. A nostalgic smile graced Bomb's lips. Their mother used to care for them the exact same way. Though, as dragons, it usually involved a lot more licking. Bomb turned to Jai, gently offering him the chance to hold the newborn. But the trauma still lingered, and he quietly declined. Ga, however, was practically vibrating with excitement to try. Bomb transferred the tiny bundle with utmost care, warning that newborn dragon scales were incredibly fragile. As Ga snuggled the baby close, a wave of pure, soul-cleansing healing washed over her. Then, Ga caught Yoram staring. It was incredibly obvious that the tough girl wanted a turn. Naturally, Yoram crossed her arms, violently denying her own soft feelings. Without warning, Ga playfully shoved the baby dragon toward her. Yoram's tough facade instantly shattered. She panicked, screaming if Ga had lost her mind. Bomb hastily scolded them to be careful. Right on cue, little Gule let out the most adorable, squeaky yawn. Yoram was instantly paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming cuteness. Ga smirked in absolute triumph. The healing power of a baby dragon was undeniable. Her heart completely melting, Yoram immediately demanded that Jai take his turn. Ga chimed in, claiming little Gule's feelings would be shattered if Papa didn't hold her. Yoram ruthlessly mocked his cold, nonchalant act. With a wicked glint in her eye, she threatened to just toss the baby at him. Catch her or let her drop, the pressure was entirely on him. Ga broke into a cold sweat. Knowing Yoram's utterly chaotic nature, that terrifying, devilish grin meant she might actually do it. Yoram boldly declared her ultimate mission. Ever since moving into this chaotic household, she only had one absolute goal: to finally see this stoic guy lose his cool. Little Guwal broke into a cold sweat. Absolute terror washed over her as Yoram casually prepared to launch the baby dragon into the stratosphere. But before disaster could strike, Jai moved with blinding speed. He snatched the tiny creature right out of her grasp, making Guwal let out a massive sigh of relief. Yoram puffed out her cheeks, whining that he completely ruined the fun. But Guwal was quick to fire back, pointing out that Yoram was the crazy one here. Seeing the baby dragon safely in his arms, Bomb gently suggested he give her a little pat. He shot her a hesitant look before slowly reaching out his hand. He awkwardly asked if he was even doing it right. But out of nowhere, a blinding flash of light filled the room. Startled, he demanded to know what Bomb was doing. She giggled, proudly waving her camera. Capturing this incredibly rare, soft moment was an absolute must for her growing collection. The mood was perfect, so Bomb pushed for a group photo. She suddenly pulled out a vibrant red rose. Everyone stared, completely bewildered by the random prop. With a playful wink, she simply announced it was the secret ingredient for the perfect shot. The rest of them just exchanged totally clueless glances. She confidently tucked the rose behind Jai's ear and gently pinned a delicate blue flower on Guwal. His eyebrows twitched in heavy annoyance, but he still carefully adjusted the baby dragon to face the camera. Bomb beamed at her masterpiece, though Yoram could clearly see Jai's soul leaving his body. Still, Bomb happily snapped the photo, gushing over how amazing the two of them looked. He grumbled at them to just hurry it up. Yoram cringed hard, refusing to join such an embarrassing setup, but Bomb's cheerful persistence was absolutely impossible to escape. With everything perfectly set, Bomb readied the timer. She counted down from 3, capturing a surprisingly magical slice of life. In the final frame, Bomb flashed a bright peace sign with a heartwarming smile. Meanwhile, Yoram and Jai loomed in the background like two grumpy guardians. Yoram wore her signature look of pure disdain. Beside her, Jai stood like a majestic statue, calmly feeding little Guwal a bottle of milk. Then, the atmosphere shifted as a serious question broke the silence. Jai locked eyes with Bomb, asking about her next move. She explained her master plan. Before the new semester kicked off, she would use the ancient art of magic transfer to teach the little one how to polymorph. This wasn't just ordinary teaching. Magic transfer required forcing raw mana directly into another being's core, instantly engraving the spell into their very soul. However, this divine shortcut came with a terrifying absolute rule. While the receiver pays 0 price, the spell literally devours the caster's own lifespan. His gaze darkened as he asked if she was truly willing to take that risk. She offered a bittersweet smile. After all, the tiny dragon couldn't safely roam the human world in her true form. Unlike the overwhelmingly powerful trio of Bomb, Yoram, and Jai, little Guwal hadn't awakened a single survival skill yet. Dragonkin matured in the blink of an eye. Bomb just wanted the little one to experience the pure joy of childhood before the harsh reality of growing up caught her. He silently offered to lend a hand if the burden became too heavy. She blinked in surprise, genuinely convinced he was totally clueless when it came to mystical arts. But since he offered, she coyly admitted there was one tiny favor he could do. She needed his strong, unwavering presence right by her side throughout the entire magical transfer. He nodded without a second thought. But immediately, she complained that he was sitting way too far away. She practically begged him to close the distance, though he found her logic incredibly suspicious. She quickly fumbled for an excuse. What if the massive mana drain caused her to collapse and drop the baby? He obviously needed to be in perfect catching range. She dramatically piled on the guilt trip. If the tiny dragon hit the cold, hard table, her heart would literally shatter into a million pieces. Defeated by her acting, Jai let out a heavy sigh and surrendered. He shifted over, closing the gap until their arms were perfectly pressed together. A fierce blush exploded across her cheeks, and she softly murmured that this was making things way too difficult. When he cluelessly asked what she meant, absolute panic set in. She frantically lied, blaming the incredibly stiff couch. Clearing her throat to mask her racing heart, the ancient ritual finally commenced. A few grueling days passed before the mana flow finally stopped. Bomb was completely depleted. Jai's deep voice broke the silence, gently praising her incredible effort. Through heavy breaths, she whispered that he was an amazing support. Sensing her extreme fatigue, the little dragon offered a comforting pat with her tiny, scaled claws. Legs trembling, she weakly staggered toward her bedroom to recover her strength. Before collapsing, she strictly ordered Jai not to slack on his duties. He had to feed the baby and ensure she burped properly. She added that they should wake her immediately if any danger arose. But suddenly, the world tilted. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as her feet completely left the floor. Jai had effortlessly scooped her up into his arms. With total nonchalance, he offered to personally escort her to bed. The sheer romantic impact sent a fresh wave of heat straight to her cheeks. Burying her face, she confessed how utterly mortifying it was to be carried like a princess. A rare smirk touched Jai's lips. He dryly noted that her mouth certainly still had plenty of stamina left. Flustered, she desperately hoped she wasn't crushing him with her weight. Without missing a beat, he casually replied that she felt light as a feather. Her heart did a massive flip at such an unexpectedly smooth line. Once she safely drifted into a deep slumber, he quietly slipped out of the room. But the moment the door clicked shut, his razor-sharp instincts flared up like a warning alarm. He instantly knew what this mysterious aura meant. A blindingly gorgeous blue light spilled out from the living room. As the glow faded, an adorable girl with striking sapphire hair stood there. The polymorph ritual was a total success. She looked incredibly tiny in her new human vessel. For a split second, the usually unfazed Jai looked completely overwhelmed, before finally offering a warm greeting. Meanwhile, under the neon glow of the Lair District Police Station, Jai's shadow clone casually strolled across the busy intersection, flanked by a grizzled veteran detective and a fierce female officer. The veteran couldn't stop raving about their latest insane victory. An elusive syndicate had mocked the elite superhuman task force for months, leaving them chasing endless dead ends. Yet, Jai had utterly dismantled the entire criminal organization single-handedly. And it only took him a matter of days. The chief was practically vibrating with absolute euphoria over the epic arrest. Riding high on the massive success, the veteran patted their backs. He eagerly asked Wari and Jai what they craved for a victory feast. Tonight, the drinks and meat were completely on him. Wari rolled her eyes with a knowing smirk. She saw right through the team leader's generous act, fully aware he was definitely going to abuse the corporate credit card. He let out a hearty belly laugh, clarifying he meant paying for round 2. But the celebratory mood instantly crashed when Jai coldly announced he had urgent personal business. His shift was over, and he was clocking out immediately. The team leader whined about him bailing out early yet again. It was becoming a frustratingly common pattern. Wari squinted her eyes with deep suspicion, pointing out that his sudden desire to rush straight home every night was incredibly sketchy. His coworkers kept prying about his love life, but he just brushed them off, claiming they had it all wrong. As he walked away, the team leader desperately called out, pleading for him to just be honest if he hated the team and swearing to treat him like royalty from now on. Meanwhile, one particular coworker named Worry clung onto his denial with a spark of hope in her eyes. Out on the bustling streets, a woman casually chatted through a holographic smartwatch display. Jita observed her high-tech conversation and decided to mimic her form. But this wasn't actually Jita. It was the shadow of the Grand Duke, a perfect clone created to endure the ultimate torture. Going to his boring desk job in his place. In his past life, this was a terrifying ability. One the Grand Duke of the Demon World used to rule over distant territories with an iron fist. But after Jada slaughtered the Grand Duke and stole his power, that demonic shadow became his personal underling. Now disguised as a modern woman, the clone arrived at a quiet park to meet its true master. The shadow offered a deep, respectful bow. asking why it had been summoned. But its eyes quickly darted to Jitae's chest, completely baffled by the tiny creature strapped to him. He casually introduced the little one as Gaul, mentioning they were just on their way back from a quick trip to the salon. The baby dragon had polymorphed into a human toddler and was resting comfortably in a baby carrier against his chest. An elderly couple walking by couldn't help but smile, praising the quiet little girl in her father's arms and completely mistaking the female clone and Jitae for a happily married couple. Trying to play along, the clone offered to take the baby. But Gaul instantly shot at a suspicious glare, leaving the demonic shadow sweating under the absolute judgment of a toddler. Jitae waved off the offer, explaining that it was fine, since the little dragon was perfectly capable of walking on her own 2 feet anyway. The shadow asked why he was playing babysitter, wondering if the other 3 freeloaders were slacking off at home. But Jitae explained that Bomb was still recovering from severe mana exhaustion, and the other 2, well, they definitely lacked the maturity to keep a child alive. Cutting straight to the chase, Jitae asked his shadow what was really on its mind. The clone tried to play innocent, feigning ignorance, but Jitae immediately shut it down, reminding the shadow that they shared a mental link, meaning every single thought and frustration flowed right back to him. Cornered, the shadow finally dropped the act. It clarified that it wasn't daring to complain, but it couldn't help but question the sheer absurdity of its current existence. Every single master who had wielded this dark power in the past had never used it to live a normal, boring life. They had all unleashed its potential for grand schemes, craving domination, bloodshed, and absolute authority. It was a tool meant for high-profile assassinations, or establishing a reign of terror from the shadows. Yet here was Jitae, the strongest being alive, using a demonic artifact just to cover his 9-to-5 corporate shifts. For a weapon forged in darkness, this peaceful, mundane reality was simply too confusing to comprehend. Realizing it might have overstepped, the shadow quickly bowed its head, begging for forgiveness for questioning its master's divine will. But Jitae wasn't angry. He understood that a sentient skill would naturally feel conflicted. With a calm gaze, he revealed that a massive, blood-stained mission was finally approaching. But until that day comes, its only duty is to keep typing on spreadsheets. He even pointed out that its human co-workers seemed eager to invite it out for some after-work drinks. He gently suggested that the clone should join them, because very soon, those peaceful days with its team would vanish forever. The shadow quietly nodded, finally understanding the weight of his words. With its new resolve, the clone faded back into the city. Jitae watched it leave, until a sudden voice broke his focus. It was a little girl begging for a fluffy teddy bear. A mother stood nearby, watching her daughter happily squeeze the stuffed animal, chuckling that she would have bought it ages ago if she knew it would bring this much joy. Little Gaul watched the scene unfold. As the human girl lifted the bear high into the sky, the baby dragon's eyes sparkled with overwhelming curiosity and longing. Seeing that adorable gaze, Jitae softly asked if she wanted a toy of her own. Without hesitation, he activated the S-rank skill, Void Storage, pulling an item straight from the dimensional rift. Out came a brilliant blue teddy bear, even cuter than the one the other girl had. He placed it gently into her tiny hands, and her jaw dropped in absolute wonder. She stood frozen, just staring at the plushie. Jitae leaned in, asking if she liked his gift. But instead of playing with it, she set the bear down and toddled right over to him. He scooped her up into his arms, wondering if she was being greedy for a second toy. He gently explained that his legendary inventory was fresh out of teddy bears. But the baby dragon just pouted. She squished her own chubby cheeks with her tiny hands, leaned forward, and pressed her soft forehead directly against his. For a second, the greatest hunter was completely confused. Then it hit him. Bomb had done this exact same motion during their mana-sharing ritual. To this baby, this was the ultimate expression of pure love. But as their minds connected, a tidal wave of suppressed trauma flooded his consciousness, the horrifying image of a cherished comrade, brutally crucified before his very eyes. Then, the suffocating scent of blood. As his blazing fury tore through oceans of demonic beasts on a hopeless battlefield, the apocalyptic sky crashing down as dragons wiped Earth from existence, and finally, the soul-crushing despair of turning back the clock all alone. Having caught a glimpse of his hellish past, little Gaul froze in absolute shock. But instead of pulling away, Jitae simply gave her a warm, gentle smile, a sight rarer than any legendary item. The heavy burdens of our depressed regressor were finally starting to melt away. Comforted by the moment, Gaul gripped his massive hand tightly while clutching her new blue teddy bear in the other. She hummed a happy little tune as they strolled through the park. Suddenly, Jitae's sharp senses caught a familiar fluctuation in the air, muttering that their ride home had already arrived. Exactly 1 second later, Guile appeared with a bright wave. Jitae raised an eyebrow, asking where she had wandered off to. But Guile just scooped Gaul into a massive hug, forcing Jitae to hold the teddy bear. Guile casually mentioned she had been running errands in the shopping district, but her sentence cut off in surprise as the baby dragons suddenly pressed their foreheads together. Instantly, a warm smile bloomed on Guile's face. She knew Gal was overjoyed about the gift from Jitae. Stunned by this flawless mind reading, he asked how she knew that. Guile chuckled, revealing a secret trait of the dragon race. When they make skin-to-skin contact, they can perfectly transmit their deepest thoughts and emotions. And touching foreheads? That was the absolute strongest connection. In simple terms, it was the ultimate magical skinship, a silent, beautiful way for the strongest creatures in the world to say exactly what was in their hearts. Jai was genuinely clueless. Guile flashed a playful smirk, teasing that she never expected the great and powerful Jai to actually have a blind spot, but his sharp eyes caught something hidden behind her back. He tilted his head, questioning the mysterious object. Realizing she was caught, she proudly revealed the bulky case. With a dramatic flourish, she pulled out an acoustic guitar. She explained that this instrument was her new voice, a way to pour out her soul without needing direct physical contact. Striking a confident pose, she asked if she finally gave off that true musician aura. She began strumming the strings with wild enthusiasm, boldly declaring her newfound passion. But instead of smiling, a dark shadow fell over Jai's face. A tragic memory flashed before his eyes. He remembered her absolute despair, the days drowned in bitter alcohol, the agonizing injections, the blood, and the heartbreaking moment she shattered her instrument. A heavy wave of guilt washed over him. As her once empty gaze met his, he swallowed a nervous lump in his throat. Breaking the tension, Guile casually whined about her sore fingertips. His voice softened as he urged her to take it easy. She blinked in confusion, asking why she should hold back. With a gentle sigh, he explained that he simply didn't want her burning herself out. But her eyes burned with determination, vowing to give this everything she had. Deciding not to push it, Jai smoothly shifted the subject, asking if Bomb had finally woken up. Sadly, the green dragon was still fast asleep, her body burning with a mild fever. It was the inevitable backlash of draining herself during the intense mana transference. Next, he asked about Yoriam. Hilariously enough, she had become completely obsessed with mortal television dramas, locking herself in her room like a total shut-in. Jai couldn't help but chuckle. He had never seen her care about anything besides sheer combat. Honestly, binge-watching shows was way better than her causing catastrophic disasters outside. The peaceful chatter faded as they finally arrived back home. Walking through the door, Gil casually reminded Gil to wash up first. Gil's face was completely overshadowed with a dark expression. At first, Gil seemed utterly oblivious as he patted her shoulder. But then, his tone dropped into dead seriousness. He ordered her to take Gule to their room immediately and to lock the doors until he gave the signal. She opened her mouth to question this sudden, terrifying shift in atmosphere, but his piercing gaze silenced her. He simply ordered her to hurry. Recognizing the silent warning in his eyes, she didn't dare argue. Faking a cheerful tone, she invited Gule for a reading session and quickly retreated down the hall. He watched their shadows disappear into safety. Then, with a heavy, steadying breath, he turned his attention toward the main door and slowly pushed it open. Murderous intent radiated from his eyes as he firmly shut the door behind him. Standing in the room were three towering, mechanical-suited entities. One of them was already kneeling over the unconscious Bomb. Their synthetic voices echoed with terrifying authority, demanding to know who dared harm the green dragon. Their hostile glares locked onto Jai, fully convinced that he was the culprit. In this world, absolute beings like dragons use subjugation magic to collar exceptional humans and monsters. These enslaved warriors became bound knights, forced to protect the dragon's lair with their very lives. And among these elite slaves, a rare few possessed such overwhelming power that they were chosen as personal bodyguards for royal hatchlings wandering the mortal realm. That explained everything. Looking at Bomb's unnaturally deep slumber, Jai instantly realized these intruders had cast high-tier sleeping magic on her. The armored guardian violently stomped the ground, the impact shaking the entire room. He furiously demanded to know if Jai was the one who reduced their precious green dragon to such a pitiful state. Unfazed by their overwhelming aura, Jai coolly suggested they mind their manners. After all, barging into someone else's home usually required a proper introduction first. The mechanical knight scoffed, mocking the arrogant human for clearly not grasping the terrifying reality of his situation. They proudly declared the ultimate law of their world. The right to ask questions belonged solely to the strong. And to prove their absolute dominance, they unleashed a formidable technique known as dark clarity. A high-tier isolation barrier instantly sealed the space around them. Glaring down at the cornered human, they warned him this was his absolute final chance. What exactly had he done to Green? With an exasperated sigh, Jai casually dropped the truth. A blue dragon had recently hatched, and Green had simply drained her own mana trying to teach the newborn how to polymorph. Taken aback by this insider knowledge, the armored intruder demanded to know Jai's true identity. Without missing a beat, Jai smirked and declared himself as their designated guardian. The intruders burst into mocking laughter. A mere human claiming to protect dragons? They sneered, asking if he even comprehended the divine status of the beings under his roof. He certainly did. But his calm demeanor shifted into deadly curiosity. He asked how they managed to track them down so quickly, especially since he knew their forces had been scattered across a distant dimension. The atmosphere instantly froze. Shock rattled beneath their metal armor. Realizing this mortal knew way too many dimensional secrets, they simultaneously drew their glowing blades. They proudly announced their grand titles. They were the absolute protectors of the hatchlings and the eternal keepers of the history of causality. They grudgingly admitted that he had taken decent care of their young lords. However, his very existence felt like a glaring anomaly, a variable far too removed from their twisted sense of justice. Their killing intent spiked to the absolute limit. They were completely certain that letting this unpredictable human live would inevitably bring ruin to their grand design. Jitae raised a hand, offering one last chance to resolve this peacefully. But ignoring his mercy, the lead guardian exploded forward, promising a swift and painless execution. Clang! Steel sang a deadly tune as Jitae effortlessly materialized his own blade to block the strike. The guardian's mechanical eyes widened in sheer disbelief. How could a mere human casually deflect the legendary sword of Stallion? But Jitae wasn't wielding just any weapon. He unleashed the formless sword, a devastating rank SS technique. In a blinding flash of silver, he completely severed the arrogant guardian's arm. Crumpling to his knees, the wounded knight gritted his teeth, cursing his own shameful defeat from a single blow. Enraged by this humiliation, his comrades commanded him to stay back, as they vowed to butcher the human themselves. Desperation clawed at the fallen knight's throat. He screamed at them to wait, realizing this monster was terrifyingly out of their league. But his warning came a second too late. Flash! A devastating storm of sword aura painted the room. In the blink of an eye, the remaining elite guardians were sliced into pieces, and their unbreakable barrier shattered like glass. Jitae slowly walked up to the last conscious survivor. A cold sweat dripped down the survivor's face. He knew from the very beginning that something was horribly wrong. No ordinary human could possibly protect dragon hatchlings while knowing the forbidden secrets of their kind. Crushing regret gnawed at his core. The warning signs were flashing right in front of him from the start, yet his blinding arrogance had sealed their ultimate doom. The horrifying truth finally clicked. He wasn't looking at a human, but a supreme transcendent being that defied the very laws of reality. Jitae stared down at the trembling creature and let out a tired sigh. Dissolving his blade into thin air, Jitae calmly reminded them that this exact bloodbath was why he wanted to talk things out first. Trembling in absolute awe and terror, the defeated guardian could only ask one final question. Was this entire world already under his sovereign rule? Jitae narrowed his eyes. How exactly had they survived the dimensional collapse? It should have been impossible. Trembling under his overwhelming aura, they confessed everything. A dimensional twist had saved them. Their lord had torn open a spatial gateway, linking the nest directly to this realm. But something had gone horribly wrong. The spatial fabric warped violently, mercilessly ejecting them from the dimensional boundary. Jitae pressed for answers about this twisted space, but the terrified guardian was completely clueless about the cosmic anomaly. However, he recalled a cryptic warning from their master. A mythical boundary known as the Horizon of Providence. All other dimensions were warping around this single point. Jitae's mind raced. In all his previous regressions, this phenomenon had never existed. The Horizon of Providence? It was an entirely new, unpredictable variable interfering with his timeline. He quickly analyzed the situation. This current playthrough was heavily deviating from his past lives. For starters, the Green Dragon's guardians had never sought him out before. He demanded to know how this mysterious horizon helped them cross over. Did it act as their absolute shield? Around them, the fallen elite guardians slowly began to stir back to life. The trembling knight revealed a shocking truth. A divine will from beyond the horizon had personally intervened. An absolute presence had guided their desperate steps, whispering the exact path they needed to take to survive the void. Following this ethereal voice, he gathered his scattered comrades and stumbled right into the hatchling sanctuary. But Jitae needed absolute proof. He violently grabbed the knight's helmet. "Look me in the eyes!" Golden light erupted as he unleashed his double S rank authority, the scales of balance. Stolen from the defeated Grand Duke, this supreme power could instantly separate truth from lies and expose the deepest intentions of the soul. The scales tipped. The guardian wasn't lying. Every unbelievable word was the absolute truth. Jitae clicked his tongue in pure frustration. He had methodically slaughtered every potential threat to prevent exactly this kind of butterfly effect. He had scanned the dimensions countless times. Yet, a completely unknown variable was threatening to ruin his perfect run. The knight added one chilling detail about the cosmic will. It had sounded intensely furious, screaming out curses into the void like a bitter god. Jitae instantly deduced the true cause. It was the Green Dragon's power core. Without a second of hesitation, he thrust his hand forward. Metal shrieked as his bare hands tore straight through the guardian's chest plate. The knight gasped in sheer agony. But what Jate found inside made his blood run cold. Out of nowhere, his absolute authority, the Grand Clock, violently reacted to a corrupted time stream. The ancient relic furiously scanned for hostile intent, emitting a terrifying aura to purge any anomaly that dared to defy the world's natural timeline. It violently locked onto every single entity from outside the designated timeline, marking them as absolute enemies slated for total extermination. Jate's eyes widened in shock. The Grand Clock only ever activated during his regressions. Why was it forcefully interfering on its own now? But against this divine mechanism, even the overpowered main character could only watch helplessly. He stood perfectly still. Meanwhile, the terrified knights watched in pure horror as a colossal clock of blinding light manifested above them. As the overwhelming light finally faded, the temporal crisis seemed to pause. Jate coldly glared at the survivors. So, what is your next move? The hatchlings were already under his absolute protection. They had no purpose here. Besides, the dimensional twist had shattered their mind control magic. He sharply challenged their reason for staying. Shocked by his sudden mercy, the knights dared to ask if they were truly free to walk away. Jate shrugged indifferently. As long as they stayed out of his way, he didn't care. Hearing this, the knights instantly scrambled for the exit, but one single knight remained rigidly rooted to the spot. Jate raised a questioning eyebrow. The stubborn warrior proudly declared his title. He was the unwavering guardian of history and causality. Bam! Jate ruthlessly backhanded him without a second thought. Are you sure about that? Bleeding, the knight still refused to step aside. A suffocating, mountain-like pressure exploded from Jate's body. He leaned in, his voice dripping with venom. This is your absolute last chance to walk away. Despite trembling violently under the overwhelming killing intent, the knight gritted his teeth and stubbornly refused to abandon his post. One of the fleeing knights called out in panic from behind. It was useless to threaten him. That man's loyalty was as dense as a brick wall. A total fool who would blindly reject a second chance at life. Hearing this, a dark, terrifying smirk crept onto Jate's face. True dedication, he muttered coldly. In a flash of blinding silver, Jate drew his blade. Swish! He instantly decapitated every single knight who had tried to flee. Blood rained down heavily, leaving only the stubborn fool alive. Horrified, the survivor asked if this was a twisted loyalty test. Jate merely chuckled. No, you're just the only interesting one here. He casually flicked the crimson blood from his blade. Tell me, why throw your life away for the green dragon? The knight swore his eternal, unbroken loyalty to the dragon clan. Jate respected the unwavering resolve, but he firmly reminded the knight that the dragon was now his personal property. Looking down at the hopelessly outmatched warrior, Jate asked a brutally honest question. With such pathetic strength, what exactly can you protect? The guardian fell completely silent, but Jate's eyes lit up with a brilliant idea. He dragged the imposing warrior straight back to the girls. Meet our brand new, fully armored janitor, Jate announced cheerfully. The proud guardian's jaw practically hit the floor in pure disbelief. Talk about a drastic career change. The former legendary knight was now fiercely scrubbing dirty dishes at the sink, but you have to admit, those plates were sparkling clean. A heavy sigh escaped his lips. When Jai first revealed his new title, he thought it was some kind of cruel joke. Jai merely smirked, questioning if the mighty warrior actually dared to refuse the offer. He desperately demanded to know how scrubbing floors and wiping windows had anything to do with protecting dragons. The logic was completely lost on him, but Jai's aura grew terrifyingly cold. He declared that his own overwhelming power was more than enough to defend them. Creating this pathetic role for him was simply an act of supreme mercy. Then came the bone-chilling warning. If he dared to fail at something as basic as janitorial duty, Jai promised to completely and utterly annihilate him. With a patronizing pat, Jai ordered him to give it his absolute best. Staring blankly ahead, he groaned at his tragic twist of fate. But then, Bomb gracefully approached. His non-existent breath caught in his throat. He almost blurted out her true title as the Green Dragon, but quickly swallowed his words, gently asking about her condition instead. With a radiant, angelic smile, she assured him it was just a passing fever. She giggled, mentioning she had already heard the hilarious news about his grand debut as the household cleaner. He awkwardly mumbled his defeat, but her eyes crinkled with warmth, complimenting how perfectly the apron suited him. She sweetly expressed her excitement to work alongside him. A furious blush exploded across his face. Suddenly, the blazing flames of motivation roared within his soul. Sweeping, washing dishes, he swore he would conquer them all to prove his worth. With burning determination, he vowed that not a single drop of dirty dishwater would ever dare touch her precious hands. Crack! His monstrous grip accidentally pulverized the plate into dust. Bomb's sweat dropped, gently reminding him of its hefty price tag. Meanwhile, a chaotic fashion show was unfolding as Gael dressed Goulet up. She was radiating absolute cuteness. Gael snapped photo after photo in pure joy before turning to Bomb, dying to know where she found such adorable clothes. Bomb smiled warmly, revealing she ordered them the second her fever broke. Crouching down, she gently asked little Goulet if the new look met her royal standards. Goulet's face broke into a massive, triumphant grin. No words were needed to see she was completely obsessed with the outfit. Spinning around, she immediately demanded the new janitor's verdict. Without missing a beat, he declared that every single piece was a flawless masterpiece on her. Goulet giggled proudly, confidently praising his excellent taste in fashion. However, amidst the cheerful chatter, Jitae remained suspiciously quiet. His sharp, calculating gaze pierced through the room, locking directly onto Gale's rough, calloused hands. Breaking the silence, he casually pointed out that she must still be practicing the guitar. Panic flashed in Gale's eyes. She frantically hid her hands, stuttering out a lame excuse about playing only as a hobby. Sensing the rising tension, Bomb quickly stepped in. She scolded Jitae to soften his harsh tone, fiercely defending Gael's deep passion for music. Jitae sighed, clarifying he had zero intention of mocking her. Smoothly shifting the awkward atmosphere, he suddenly realized a certain lazy dragon was missing from the picture. Yoram hadn't shown her face all day. He asked if she was barricaded in her room again, binge-watching human television. Everyone just shrugged. The janitor grumbled that he tried to enter her domain earlier to clean, only to be fiercely rejected at the door. He couldn't help but worry, noting how absolutely exhausted she looked earlier. Bomb offered a weary sigh, guessing the troublemaker had simply pulled another legendary all-nighter. Jai's eyes narrowed with deep suspicion. Marching straight to her door, he shoved it open, and his expression instantly darkened into a fierce scowl. Empty liquor bottles littered the floor like fallen soldiers, alongside an overflowing ashtray of doom. Yoram lazily opened one eye, questioning his sudden intrusion. Jitae deadpanned that he just wanted to confirm her survival. The television was blasting at deafening volumes. With a disappointed sigh, he gestured to the screen, asking if this was her current obsession. She enthusiastically nodded, asking if he had witnessed its glory. He bluntly replied no. She went on a passionate, raging rant, complaining that it stretched for 7 long seasons despite a garbage plotline. Not to mention, the historical accuracy was an absolute joke. Jitae mercilessly told her to turn the trash off then. Shifting to his authoritative tone, he ordered her out for an emergency family meeting. Standing before the gathered dragons, he issued a terrifying decree. The entire house was going to undergo a massive deep clean. Gasps of pure horror echoed through the room as they demanded a reason for this sudden madness. Jitae crossed his arms, delivering a harsh dose of reality. They might be majestic mythological beasts, but while hiding on Earth, they needed to embrace basic human hygiene. He glared pointedly at Yoram and Gale. Their personal lairs were absolute disaster zones. Gula gasped in sheer betrayal, demanding to know when he had infiltrated her sacred space. Puffing out her cheeks, she crossed her arms and cited ancient dragon laws. Her mother strictly forbade entering another's territory without absolute permission. Jitae smoothly countered, asking if her mother ever commanded her to pick up her own trash. The tiny dragon instantly froze, blushing furiously in ultimate defeat. The rules of engagement were set. Everyone was responsible for their own quarters, while the living room and kitchen fell to their monstrous new janitor. Hearing this, Yoram exploded in ridiculous outrage. She arrogantly pointed out the obvious. They literally hired a maid for this exact reason. Doing manual labor was totally beneath her. As she argued, she blatantly dug in her nose, making Gael gag in pure disgust. With a wicked smirk, Yoram joked that she mined that treasure just for her. Gael shrieked in absolute horror as the gross offering was shoved in her direction. A full-blown panic attack ensued. She absolutely despised anything even remotely unsanitary. Yoram mercilessly mocked her, telling her to channel that energy into scrubbing her messy room. Then, tossing the nickname Lumpy at their muscular janitor, she proudly announced her gym departure, ordering him to polish her room before her glorious return. Bomb casually mentioned she had already purified her own room yesterday. So instead, she cheerfully volunteered to brave the outside world for dinner supplies. Now that they had more mouths to feed, she declared her grand ambition to cook an absolute feast. Jitae nodded approvingly, until a dark, horrifying flashback of her first disastrous meal struck his mind. Innocently, she asked if his palate desired anything specific. Sweating nervously, he quickly declined, simply praying for her safe return. The janitor finally breached the threshold of Yoram's cursed sanctuary. He didn't even possess a physical nose, yet the invisible stench hit him like a devastating shockwave. He tried to compare the foul aura to the deepest pits of the demon realm, but quickly realized this earthly mess was infinitely more terrifying. Lifting the overflowing ashtray, the dark truth behind her sickly complexion finally dawned on him. Was this legendary beast seriously trying to max out her poison resistance in her sleep? Stealing his resolve, he tackled the largest piles of garbage first. Suddenly, Jai's magical clone materialized. It sharply scolded him, pointing out that an aluminum can absolutely did not belong in that pile. The clone crossed its arms, delivering a stern lecture on the intricate human arts of waste sorting. Cans and plastics demanded separate dimensions of disposal. To witness a designated cleaner fail at such fundamental earthly laws made the clone sigh in utter disbelief. It sarcastically questioned if his homeland of Ascalifa lacked the sacred concept of recycling, silently judging his uncivilized roots. The janitor narrowed his eyes. Dark, demonic energy practically poured from the figure before him. It was an unmistakable aura. This arrogant being was nothing but a mere clone. "What are you just standing around for?" the doppelganger snapped. Its condescending tone and haughty glare were absolutely flawless. It was playing the role of the original master to terrifying perfection. But suddenly, a chilling voice echoed from the shadows. "I gave you an order to clean. What exactly do you think you are doing?" The true master had finally arrived on the scene. The clone scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. It claimed it was merely educating the lowly janitor on proper work ethic. Clearly, the fake was getting completely drunk on its borrowed authority. Jai was not amused in the slightest. He coldly ordered his copy to grab a mop and start scrubbing immediately. He had summoned the clone specifically to help the janitor conquer the overwhelming chores. The fake master's eyes bulged in pure, unadulterated shock. Meanwhile, a smug, satisfied grin crept across the janitor's face. Sweet, poetic justice had been served. Elsewhere, the daily grind continued. Yoriam pushed her limits in the sweaty training room. Bomb was out hunting for fresh groceries, and Ghoul lazily kept watch as Gale tidied up her personal quarters. Back at the mansion, the clone was forced into brutal hard labor. He and the janitor scrubbed the massive estate until the sun dipped below the horizon. Finally, the grueling, back-breaking task came to an end. Jai tossed a detailed map onto the table, pointing to a specific coordinate. "Pack your bags," he commanded. The clone's next grand destination? The freezing, unforgiving depths of Moscow, Russia. Deep within that frozen wasteland hid Invisibility, a notorious syndicate of demonic humans. Intel suggested they were conducting dark experiments to forge a transcendent tier nightmare. The original gave his copy a strict, non-negotiable deadline. Tie up all loose ends at the police precinct within exactly 7 days. After that, the Russian infiltration operation would officially begin. The mission was absolutely critical. Breach enemy territory and track down the commander-class catastrophe known as Prototype X. The clone bowed its head, swearing to prepare for departure at once. Suddenly, the front door burst open. "I am back!" Bomb cheered with boundless energy. Jai stared at the absolute mountains of ingredients in her arms. With extra people in the house, she had decided to prepare a monumental feast. Seeing the aspiring chef return, the clone felt a shiver of dread and tried to make a quick escape, but a heavy, unyielding hand clamped down on its shoulder. Jai was not letting him slip away that easily. "Take off your clothes. We are swapping," the original demanded. His eyes burned with deadly seriousness, as if he were facing a disaster-level threat. Moments later, Bomb proudly presented her culinary creations to the table. A thick, purple miasma radiated from the terrifying dishes. Surprisingly, Ghoul dug in without a second thought. To her, the sinister stew tasted exactly like the nostalgic delicacies back in Ascalifa. Even Yoriam took a brave bite and nodded in quiet approval. Jai watched safely from the sidelines, jokingly wishing the janitor could join the feast. Sadly, the spectral cleaner lacked a mouth to suffer or enjoy the meal. Disguised as the original, the clone sat trembling at the dining table. The grim realization finally struck him like a physical blow. He had been summoned solely to act as a meat shield for this toxic dinner. Meanwhile, the true Jai was miles away from that culinary nightmare. He stood amidst an abandoned industrial zone near the Syndicate's hidden lair. The concrete was painted crimson, littered with the broken bodies of his enemies. A lone survivor gasped for air amidst the absolute carnage. Despite his fatal wounds, the bloodied man glared up with pure venom in his eyes. He still had just enough strength to spit curses at the monster standing above him. "Do you really think you can walk away from this?" the thug snarled. He berated the young man, calling him a pathetic human who had no idea what kind of hell he had just unleashed. "If you knew who held my leash, you would be crying on your knees," he threatened through blood-stained teeth. Jai's expression remained colder than ice. "I know exactly who is backing you," he whispered ominously. It was none other than Wei Wan, the esteemed professor of the Blue Dragon Academy, and a high-ranking demonic mastermind lurking within the shadows of invisibility. The puzzle pieces were falling perfectly into place. Wei Wan was orchestrating a massive conspiracy from the dark. Jai pressed his boot against the survivor, demanding to know the ultimate goal of this grand scheme. "Do not even attempt to lie," Jai warned, his voice dripping with killing intent. His irises flared gold as he activated the rank S skill, Scales of Balanced Eyes. Terrified, the thug stuttered that he was completely out of the loop on the exact specifics. But facing absolute death, he coughed up one crucial secret. If the professor's master plan succeeded in 3 months, this lowly grunt would also be handpicked for ultimate greatness. Chosen for what? The seats, Jai demanded sharply. The dying man nodded frantically in a cold sweat. The seats were the absolute apex predators, the four supreme demonic rulers of invisibility. In the treacherous underworld, demonic beings usually operated as lone wolves or scattered factions. They utterly despised answering to any higher authority. However, anyone who claimed one of the seats gained absolute command over endless, bloodthirsty legions. Even worse, they were granted catastrophic power that rivaled walking natural disasters. It was the absolute zenith of demonic evolution, the ultimate throne of darkness that every single villain hungered for. A deep frown creased Jai's forehead. This timeline was heavily distorted. In all his previous regressions, Wan never possessed the sheer strength or ambition to reach for those legendary thrones. Suddenly, the system blared an ominous warning. His supreme authority, Grand Clock X, detected a suffocating malice, a dark intention bleeding in from beyond the very horizon of providence. The golden gears of fate spun wildly, scanning for anomalies that shattered the world's timeline. And the system locked onto a single, undeniable target. The demonic professor, Wan. The cosmic truth was finally revealed. An unknown entity from outside the timeline despised the cycle of regression. This mysterious godlike being had directly meddled in the affairs of mortals. Gifted with forbidden power from the finest past ruins, Wan had become an unprecedented glitch. He had completely derailed the destined flow of the repeated timelines. Jai clenched his fists in grim realization. First, it was the Guardians, and now this rogue professor. This unseen enemy was actively manipulating everything around him to sabotage his destiny. The bleeding thug snapped him back to harsh reality. He desperately swore on his very soul that he had spilled every single secret he held. "Please, let me live. I can be your spy," the man begged pitifully. Tears streamed down his face as he played the ultimate sympathy card. He claimed a sick, fragile mother was waiting for him at home. He promised absolute loyalty and wailed for mercy, but in the very next heartbeat, a flash of silver split the air. The thug's severed head hit the concrete with a sickening thud, rolling away into the shadows. The scales of balanced eyes had seen through his pathetic lies instantly. Jai had already given his final warning, but honestly, even if the sob story were true, his fate had been sealed the moment they crossed paths. Crimson flames erupted as Jai unleashed the rank S skill, Destruction. The raging inferno completely erased the warehouse from existence. Meanwhile, the true Jai casually strolled through a peaceful, sunlit park. His mind raced at lightning speed to connect the dots. If this master plan guaranteed Wan a seat, it had to be an event of catastrophic proportions. And a disaster of that magnitude was undoubtedly tied to the Syndicate's main lair. Then, a crucial memory flashed in his mind. Yoriam had been officially invited to represent their faction at the massive end-of-year gala. That grand event was the perfect bloody stage for a villain's debut. His intense thoughts were suddenly interrupted by high-pitched squealing nearby. A group of passing women were totally losing their minds over an incredibly adorable child. Jai blinked in surprise. The cute baby was actually Ghoul. The ladies were absolutely swarming her with overwhelming compliments. Meanwhile, the mighty companion crossed her tiny arms, radiating pure, unimpressed annoyance at the mortal's fuss. The gossiping women practically swarmed them. They cooed over the little girl's adorable name and unique hair color, bombarding Bomb with an endless stream of nosy questions. Suddenly, a chilling shadow fell over the group. Jitae stepped forward, unleashing an aura so intimidating it froze the air itself. He coldly demanded if they had business with his child, sending the terrified women scurrying away in an instant. Bomb finally let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She hadn't seen him all day, and softly asked about his whereabouts. His answer was vague, merely brushing it off as taking care of some private business. His piercing gaze then turned to her, questioning her outing with little Gale. Bomb explained that with her recent illness and the academy opening tomorrow, their precious bonding moments had been cut terribly short. A hint of sorrow laced her voice. She knew the relentless pace of academy life meant her days of simply holding the child would soon become a rare luxury. A comfortable silence settled between them. Bomb's gaze drifted, softening as she watched the stoic man gently observe little Gale playing happily by the sparkling fountain. Her heart suddenly fluttered with a dangerous, unspoken wish. She shyly murmured that sitting together like this, it felt like they were a real family, with him as the father and her as the mother. The romantic words spilled from her lips before she could stop them, hinting at a future for just the two of them. But Jitae simply turned his head, staring at her with an utterly unreadable expression. Panic instantly flooded her veins. She awkwardly choked on her words, forcing out a nervous laugh. Waving her hands, she desperately claimed it was just a silly joke to break the heavy tension. Unamused by her flustered display, he flatly stated that if she was going to speak nonsense, it was time to leave. Effortlessly scooping Gale into his arms, his voice melted into a gentle tone as he asked the child if she enjoyed her day. Bomb could only watch their retreating backs, her eyes practically overflowing with hidden affection. When the sun rose the next morning, the academy gates officially swung open. Little Gale was absolutely buzzing with boundless energy. Bouncing on her heels, the young girl tugged at Bomb's sleeve, eagerly asking about her class schedule, while secretly praying they would end up in the exact same rooms. With a warm smile, Bomb listed off her intense academic load. She would be diving into superhuman studies, classic literature, advanced magic theory, and finally, sociology. But then, Bomb noticed something completely absurd. She stared in pure confusion at the piece of plain toast dangling from Gale's mouth. Hadn't the girl just eaten a massive breakfast at home? A soft giggle bubbled past the bread as Gale's cheeks flushed a bright, rosy pink. She playfully teased Bomb for not knowing the most important romance rule of all. She proudly shared the legendary wisdom passed down by her mother. The ultimate manga trope. If a girl sprints to school with toast in her mouth and bumps into a stranger, the heavens themselves have declared that person as her one true, destined soulmate. The mere thought of this fairy tale romance sent sparks flying from the little girl's eyes. She was absolutely determined to collide with her fated knight in shining armor today. But fate works in mysterious and often hilarious ways. Smack! Gale collided straight into a solid figure. It was the tomboyish Urim, who immediately flashed a wicked grin and declared herself as the girl's destined, star-crossed lover. Absolute horror washed over Gale's tiny face. She frantically protested that they were both girls. But Urim just threw her head back, laughing that true love transcends all boundaries. Winking playfully, Urim cited some spicy Western dramas she had seen where anything was possible. Shifting gears, the fiery girl crossed her arms and demanded to know where Jitae had vanished to this morning. After all, the man had promised to observe their opening classes. Bomb quickly jumped to his defense, explaining he had to make a mandatory detour to the academic affairs office to sort out some crucial paperwork. Urim narrowed her eyes, a mischievous glint flashing within them. She pointed out his suspicious absence the day before, casually tossing out a wild theory that the stoic man might be secretly meeting a lover. The words struck Bomb like a critical hit. The color completely drained from her face, leaving her ghost white. She frantically waved her hands, defending his honor and swearing he would never do such a thing. Gale blinked in confusion at Bomb, whose nervous sweat was practically forming a puddle on the floor. Suddenly, the little girl's attention shifted. She pointed a tiny finger at a suspicious group of adults lingering near the gates. Bomb quickly gathered her composure, identifying the vultures as news reporters. Urim scoffed, recognizing their predatory gaze. They were definitely prowling the academy grounds to sniff out the most elite, monster-tier freshmen of the year. Suddenly, a camera lens glinted in the sunlight. One of the journalists locked onto Urim's distinct features like a heat-seeking missile. The fiery girl clicked her tongue. Her infamous reputation had finally caught up to her. Like a pack of starving wolves, the press swarmed her position. Microphones were shoved aggressively into her personal space, demanding an exclusive interview with an overwhelming intensity. The chaotic mob thoroughly terrified little Gale, who dove behind Urim for safety. That was the final straw. Urim's aura exploded with blazing annoyance as she roared at the journalists to shut their mouths. But the bloodthirsty reporters were relentless, utterly unsatisfied by her hostile rejection. Cracking her knuckles with a savage grin, Urim decided that if they wanted a story, she would give them a war. She brazenly provoked the entire mob to bring it on. Meanwhile, far away from the academy chaos, a completely different battle was brewing. Little Gale was fiercely pouting by the front door, catching the attention of the estate's stoic janitor. A heavy, suffocating awkwardness filled the air. Jitae had specifically warned him that morning about an empty house, leaving him completely unprepared for this unexpected tiny intruder. Against all odds, the lone janitor had been entrusted with the ultimate S-rank mission, babysitting. Sweeping floors and clearing trash was one thing, but taming a sulking child was a completely terrifying frontier. The man possessed absolutely zero experience in the art of childcare. Gulping down his anxiety, he cautiously closed the distance, prompting the little girl to snap her unamused gaze directly onto him. Clearing his throat, he awkwardly delivered the harsh truth. The master and the ladies would not return until nightfall. He gently advised her to abandon her post at the door and find a softer place to rest. Gale stared blankly at the nervous man for 3 agonizing seconds, before turning her head and blatantly ignoring his existence. Crushed by the awkwardness, the defeated janitor retreated to the safety of his mop and bucket. But as he swept past the living room, a colorful pile of toys caught his eye. A tactical idea formed in his mind. Mustering his courage, he approached the girl once more, offering a truce in the form of a brightly illustrated picture book. The strategy was a massive success. They relocated to the cozy living room, and Gale's eyes immediately sparkled with pure, childish wonder. The janitor let out a massive sigh of relief at dodging a meltdown. Taking on the role of storyteller, he cleared his throat and analyzed the cover. The innocent title read in sparkling letters, "My Dad is a Fairy." He began narrating the classic opening line, "Long, long ago, deep within a vast forest." But his battle-hardened mind immediately started overanalyzing. A deep forest from long ago? That must be referring to the deadly primordial woods before the catastrophic demon age. Remaining outwardly calm, he read the next line. It detailed a secluded life where a young girl named Dulcin lived peacefully alone with her father. The janitor's grim internal monologue activated again. No mother mentioned. She clearly perished in the brutal demonic raids. Yet, surviving with even one parent during that blood-soaked era was nothing short of a divine miracle. He turned the colorful page, reciting how every night before bed, the father would whisper legendary tales of the olden times to his daughter. The janitor's eyes widened with dark realization. Stories of the olden times in a post-apocalyptic woodland? He was absolutely certain the father was recounting the horrific carnage of the Great Continental War. His dramatic, overly serious tone completely shifted the vibe of the children's book. In his mind, little Dulcin was being raised as a ruthless war fanatic. Meanwhile, Gale tilted her head, deeply bewildered by the intense, gritty atmosphere of her fairy tale. He read the climax. One fateful morning, the girl awoke to find her father missing from their cabin. The grim janitor nodded sagely, internally concluding the truth. The warrior father had obviously set out on a perilous quest to secure a new bride for survival. Legend speaks of a dark tradition from a bygone era, a time when defeated female warriors were claimed as mere spoils of war. He offered a warm smile, fully expecting Dulcin to be thrilled about gaining a brand new mother. But the words instantly died in his throat the moment he caught her chilling expression. Total, crushing disappointment radiated from her eyes. Sweating nervously, he asked if the ancient tale wasn't to her liking. Without uttering a single syllable, she simply raised a finger and pointed straight toward the corner of the room. A silent, absolute command followed, pointing directly at his face, then firmly back to the corner. Her message was loud and clear. Sit in the penalty zone, while she enjoyed her book in absolute peace. Meanwhile, Baum was busy losing his mind, picturing Jitae entangled in a shocking romance. Fast forward to the morning commute, where a sleek luxury car smoothly rolled up to the academy gates. The moment her elegant shoes touched the pavement, every male student in the vicinity froze in absolute awe. This flawless beauty? Her name was Gongju. She wasn't just another pretty face. She was the rightful heir to the legendary Gong clan, one of Korea's top 3 elite swordsmanship families. But ironically, she cared infinitely more about keeping her eyeliner perfectly sharp than sharpening her actual blade. To her, martial arts training was an absolute nightmare. Why? Because breaking a sweat meant completely ruining her meticulously crafted makeup. Glancing toward the entrance, she spotted a massive swarm of reporters completely blocking the path. With a confident smirk, she naturally assumed they were desperately waiting for her grand arrival. Playing the tired celebrity, she ordered her loyal guard, Secretary Kim, to clear out the annoying paparazzi. But reality hit her like a massive truck when he awkwardly whispered that she wasn't the main attraction. Her pristine eyebrows twitched with sheer curiosity. Who on earth could possibly steal her spotlight? Pushing her way to the front row, her jaw practically unhinged at the bizarre spectacle before her. Yuram honestly had no clue why he was tagging along. He claimed he just wanted to, so she gave him a stern warning. Absolutely no whining when things get rough later. He eagerly agreed, proudly declaring himself as her ultimate fan. Yuram scoffed at the utter nonsense, but before she could roast him, a swarm of reporters interrupted, begging to start the interview. Glaring at the mob, she laid down the absolute law. If they dared to step out of line, she would crush their hopes, cancel the interview, and walk right through those doors. Her terms were brutal and simple. 1 question per person, and make it lightning fast. She pointed at a reporter in a hat to kick things off, who immediately began a long-winded, polite introduction. Strike 1! He wasted too much breath, so she ruthlessly yelled, Next! The guy whined that he hadn't even asked his question yet, but her decision was absolute. The next journalist in line, hailing from CT France, eagerly took the spotlight. He desperately asked how it felt to become the absolute center of attention in the superhuman society, with powerful figures hunting her down. Completely unbothered, Yuram literally picked her nose on camera and casually muttered, It totally sucks. Without missing a beat, she called for the next victim. They asked if she knew about the massive fan club that had just erupted online in her honor, begging her to share a heartfelt message with her loyal followers. Suddenly, it clicked. That explained why her tag-along companion proudly called himself a fan. But in Yuram's eyes, they were all just a bunch of hopeless idiots. The atmosphere shifted as Park Gang-ho from Gasan Daily stepped up. With a sly grin, he demanded to know the hidden meaning behind her explosive outburst at the prestigious Blue Dragon School interview hall. Her eyes narrowed with disgust as she told him to drop the act, since he already knew exactly what it meant. She mockingly asked if his hollow skull was completely stuffed with pure garbage. She tried to dismiss him and call the next reporter, but the sleazy journalist refused to back down. He arrogantly demanded a detailed explanation, pressing her on why she chose such a scandalous word out of everything she could have said. He was clearly trying to paint her in a dirty light, insinuating some dark, hidden intention behind her actions. But before he could finish his trap, she sliced right through his sentence. With a dangerous smirk, she boldly asked if he wanted to do it with her. The sheer audacity of her sarcastic joke left the sleazy reporter completely flushed and stammering. Rolling her eyes, she pointed out the obvious. He knew damn well she was joking, and since he knew the truth, his pathetic attempt to twist her words was nothing but a cheap trick. Trying to regain his dominance, he sneered that she was just young and hopelessly naive. He condescendingly claimed that twisting the truth was simply a reporter's job, ordering her to give a juicy response so he could craft his masterpiece. That was the final straw. In a flash, she grabbed him by the collar, her voice dripping with pure menace as she warned him that her patience had officially run out. Ga panicked, begging her to ignore the trash and just head inside. Click, click! The slimy reporter greedily snapped photos of her terrifying rage. He lived for this kind of aggressive drama because it guaranteed massive views. But craving an even bigger scoop, he decided to push his luck and provoke her further. With a nasty smirk, he threatened that if she kept acting like a wild dog, he would be forced to write a devastating article based entirely on his twisted imagination. He boldly laid out his master plan, a scandalous headline screaming that the rising superhuman star was demanding inappropriate relations from innocent journalists. A monstrous aura erupted from her body. She coldly told him to write whatever he pleased because she was going to slaughter him long before his article ever hit the press. She cocked her fist back for a lethal strike, sending Ga into a state of absolute terror. But just as her fist was about to cave his skull in, a powerful hand materialized out of nowhere and caught her punch. Breathing a massive sigh of relief, Ga praised the mysterious newcomer for their absolutely perfect timing. Jai shot her a sharp glare, demanding to know if she was already stirring up chaos the second her feet touched the ground. Yuram seethed with blazing fury, screaming that the blame fell entirely on that absolute swine. She thrashed wildly as he casually hoisted her over his shoulder like a mere sack of potatoes. Without missing a beat, Jai coldly declared to the surrounding crowd that the press conference was officially over. His voice dropped to a lethal whisper, warning the journalists that not a single word of this should ever see the light of day. Suddenly, a monstrous aura erupted from his body. The sheer spiritual pressure cracked the very pavement beneath his feet, instantly shattering every camera in the vicinity. Yuram completely froze, utterly overwhelmed by his terrifying presence. But in the blink of an eye, his killing intent vanished, and Jai casually turned to Ga, telling her to head inside unless she wanted to ruin her very first day at the academy. Watching from the shadows, Jui nudged Secretary Kim, eagerly suggesting they investigate the hidden clan of that monstrous kid. But in a classic comedic whiplash, she wasn't talking about Jai's overwhelming power at all. Her eyes were completely glued to the blonde girl's breathtakingly massive proportions. Meanwhile, inside the hallowed halls of the academy, a stern voice echoed across the quiet room to welcome the fresh blood. Standing commandingly at the podium was none other than Professor Kai, a highly respected master of the elite swordsmanship division. The day's lecture focused entirely on the ancient history of the blade and the absolute mental discipline required to wield it. Yuram rested her chin on her hand, practically dying of sheer boredom. Philosophical nonsense meant absolutely nothing to her. Her battle-hungry soul only craved the adrenaline of actual combat. Sitting beside her, Jai raised an eyebrow in genuine surprise, fully expecting this impatient hothead to have ditched the stifling lecture minutes ago. She scoffed, proudly declaring that her sheer willpower was strong enough to survive agonizingly slow television shows. Her burning motivation was pure, unadulterated spite. She was going to train relentlessly until she could shatter that giant chunk of hooded armor into a million pieces. The fateful day would inevitably come when she would completely crush Javier beneath her heel. Pausing her grand monologue, she suddenly shot Jai a suspicious look, demanding to know why on earth he was even sitting in this beginner's class with her. He flatly replied that she already knew the exact reason behind his mood. But she immediately fired back, insisting she had been a perfect angel lately, with 0 incidents to her name. He did not miss a single beat, ruthlessly reminding her about the unfortunate reporter she nearly beat to a pulp just hours ago. She scoffed loudly, arguing that the miserable pig practically begged for a beating by provoking her. She swore that if he had been in her shoes, he would have unleashed absolute hell, too. Unfazed by her temper, he simply told her to back off because her body heat was suffocating. A mischievous grin spread across her face as she leaned in closer, teasingly asking why he was complaining when normal guys would absolutely lose their minds over this kind of close, physical contact. She poked at his defenses, asking if the great kidnapper was actually feeling shy. But his expression remained a completely blank wall. Failing to shatter his iron composure, she crossed her arms in a grumpy pout. With a heavy, dramatic sigh, she groaned that everything around her was just too incredibly boring. He casually replied that studying was meant to be pure torture, but academics were the furthest thing from her mind. She clicked her tongue, muttering that a guy who kidnaps people should at least have some dramatic flair. Back when they first met, he gave off the overwhelming aura of an absolute monster. Because of that terrifying presence, she had genuinely expected her days to be an endless, thrilling rush of pure adrenaline. She definitely did not sign up for this suffocating game of playing house. He dryly pointed out that the sheer chaos she caused on their way to school provided more than enough stimulation for one day. But to a battle-crazed soul like hers, those petty squabbles were nothing but child's play. She craved the brutal clash of steel, the scent of blood, and the intoxicating high of absolute victory. Suddenly, Professor Kai walked over, noting with a knowing smirk that she looked like a caged beast ready to snap. He casually mentioned that he had the perfect cure for her pent-up aggression. His brilliant solution? Ordering her and her stoic guardian to stay late after class and clean the dusty gym storage room. Now, she was glaring daggers at the wooden training swords, wiping them down with pure, unfiltered rage. Finally, her boiling patience snapped entirely. Throwing the cleaning rag down, she complained that the more she thought about this punishment, the more her warrior pride shattered. Why on earth was a mighty existence like her scrubbing floors when she would gladly take a brutal beating instead? Jay did not even look up, ruthlessly ordering her to shut her mouth and make her hands move faster. Gritting her teeth, she demanded they just summon that useless dorm janitor to do the dirty work, but Jay calmly shut her down, asking exactly who would babysit little Gule back home if they did that. Trapped by his flawless, infuriating logic, she could only click her tongue in bitter defeat. Changing the subject, she threw a sudden, sharp question his way, asking if a freak like him ever actually bothered studying as a kid. Without breaking his steady scrubbing rhythm, he gave a flat reply. He simply never had the luxury of time for something as peaceful as studying. She smirked, mercilessly teasing him for being a total slacker who was just making up pathetic excuses. But his next words wiped the smile right off her face. His voice grew heavy as he revealed that his childhood was swallowed by a catastrophic war, leaving him fighting tooth and nail just to see another dawn. Her eyes narrowed, wondering if he was just spinning a dramatic web of lies to mess with her. Lighting up a cigarette to calm her nerves, she stared through the smoke and bluntly asked if his miserable life was actually any fun. His answer was a cold, quiet negative. Frustrated by his empty eyes, she demanded to know why he chose to live like a walking corpse. She boldly declared that if she possessed his heaven-defying strength, she would never settle for such a suffocating, dull existence. Leaning in with burning curiosity, she asked the ultimate question. Did reaching the absolute peak of power completely kill the thrill of the fight for him? His gaze drifted into the distance, as he whispered that the wheels of time simply keep turning, and giving up just is not an option. His profound, world-weary answer flew right over her head. Sighing, he shattered the heavy atmosphere, barking at her to cut the endless chatter and get back to work. Later that night, back at their chaotic dorm, the atmosphere was peacefully domestic. Bomb and little Gule were quietly playing in the living room, while Yoram slouched on the couch, with the dorm janitor sweeping nearby. Yoram was fiercely glaring at a Rubik's Cube, battling the colorful puzzle for the very first time. Meanwhile, the janitor was busily cleaning right behind her personal space. It only took a few agonizing seconds before her fragile patience completely exploded. She threw a raging fit, screaming that his constant, annoying hovering was shattering her supreme concentration. She ruthlessly cursed him out, calling the poor guy a completely useless bastard. Watching from afar, the ever-observant Bomb instantly realized that a dangerous storm was brewing in Yoram's mood. Bomb gently asked if the annoying reporters from earlier were the reason behind her explosive fury. While those pests definitely fueled her blazing irritation, the real venom in her heart came from a suffocating lack of adrenaline. Her fists were itching because she had not crushed a single enemy in days. Suddenly, her piercing gaze locked onto her sister as she loudly called out Bomb's name. Hearing her actual name drop from Yoram's lips left Bomb looking utterly horrified. The unexpected, formal address genuinely made Bomb panic, wondering if the fiery brawler was suddenly suffering from a fatal brain injury that required an emergency hospital visit. Growling, Yoram threatened to go back to calling her, "Hey you," if she kept staring like that. Brushing off the awkwardness, Yoram dropped a sudden, heavy philosophical bomb. She bluntly asked exactly what Bomb was living for. In response, both Bomb and little Gael just stared back at her with comically blank, stunned expressions. Breaking the hilarious silence, Bomb leaned over and whispered into Gael's ear, concluding that the meat-headed warrior was finally hitting her edgy puberty phase. Gael nodded with total seriousness, completely agreeing with the diagnosis. A vein popped on Yoram's forehead as she angrily snapped that she could hear every single word of their whispering. Calming down, she revealed that she had interrogated their human guardian earlier about his reason for living. Lowering her voice into a deadpan, soulless monotone, she mimicked his depressing line about how time just keeps moving so he cannot give up. The sisters were actually quite impressed by her flawlessly accurate impression. Returning to her normal fiery tone, she ranted that the human was fundamentally broken. He did not feel a single ounce of joy in his pathetic life. In her mind, existence required excitement. If mortals could not feel the thrill of enjoyment, their entire lives were practically meaningless. To prove her point, she pointed aggressively at the yellow monkey, Gayul. She pointed out how the gluttonous girl looked like she might ascend to heaven from pure bliss just by stuffing her face with delicious food. And then there was the little blue kid, Gule, who found endless radiant happiness just by hugging a worn-out raggedy teddy bear. Bomb tilted her head thoughtfully, suggesting that Jay was not necessarily dead inside. He was just incredibly secretive and probably had a hidden passion he was not sharing with them. Yoram scoffed, boldly declaring that Bomb was cut from the exact same cloth as him. They both wore unreadable masks, hid their true thoughts, and were agonizingly, overwhelmingly boring. Bomb playfully gasped, pretending to be terribly offended by the accusation. Crossing her arms, Yoram challenged her on the spot, demanding to know if the gentle dragon actually enjoyed anything at all. A soft, mysterious smile bloomed on Bomb's face as she whispered that there was, in fact, exactly one thing. Leaning in close, she revealed to Yoram that their intimidating mister actually possessed a surprisingly shy, tender side. The absolute absurdity of those words twisted Yoram's face into a hilarious, chaotic mask of pure shock and ultimate disgust. She barked out a laugh, calling it absolute, unfiltered garbage. How could a blood-soaked, tearless psychopath who did not even blink in the face of death possibly be shy? Bomb giggled softly, admitting that she used to see him as a cold-blooded monster too. But over time, her sharp eyes had caught glimpses of his armor cracking, revealing the most unexpectedly adorable, flustered reactions. Seeing her sister's cheeks flush, Yoram violently lunged forward. Her wild eyes locked onto Bomb with a look of absolute horror and revulsion as she screamed at the top of her lungs, demanding to know why the gentle girl was smiling like a love-struck fool. Bomb flinched hard, completely startled by the fiery girl's explosive outburst. Smirking wickedly to recover her pride, Yoram mercilessly teased her sister, loudly accusing the two of secretly doing some seriously weird, mushy stuff behind everyone's backs. The room echoed with Bomb's bright laughter, her defenses completely crumbling under the playful tickle attack. Just then, Gule's footsteps clicked against the wooden staircase as she descended. She casually dropped a massive bombshell, announcing that the entire Lair community was absolutely obsessed with her, even launching a dedicated fan cafe. But Yoram, completely misreading the mood, assumed things were getting a little too heated and romantic. Gule stood frozen in absolute shock. A massive blush exploded across her face as she covered her eyes and stammered, begging them to quickly finish whatever inappropriate thing they were doing. Yoram instantly snapped, her patience hitting rock bottom. "What on earth is going through that wild imagination of yours?" she roared in absolute defense. Later that afternoon, the atmosphere took a sudden and awkward turn. Bomb marched into the main character's room with a burning question, only to catch Jay right in the middle of buttoning his shirt. Panic flashed across her eyes like lightning. She slammed the door shut at breakneck speed, frantically apologizing for barging in completely unannounced. "What is it?" he asked calmly, waving her back inside since his outfit was already secured. Her usual confidence vanished into thin air, and she fidgeted shyly as she asked if he would escort her out today. Caught entirely off guard by the sudden request, he asked what brought this on. She pouted, pointing out a painful truth. He was always out exploring with Yoram and Gule, yet he hadn't taken her out a single time. He couldn't exactly confess the stressful reality of the situation. Yoram was a walking battle hazard, and Gule would follow any kidnapper holding a sweet snack, but he kept those dark thoughts locked tight inside his head. Munching happily on a piece of bread, Gule's voice came out completely muffled. "Aren't you supposed to be heading to the academy?" she mumbled toward Bomb. Bomb didn't miss a single beat. "I am currently busy asking him out on a date," she declared with absolute, unwavering confidence. Gule nearly choked on her food in pure shock. But Yoram quickly rolled her eyes, clarifying that Bomb just needed a formal chaperone. Still, Bomb's words lingered in the air, leaving her wondering why she was always the one left behind. She narrowed her eyes, accusing him of blatantly playing favorites with the other two girls. Jay let out an exhausted sigh, swearing on his life that wasn't the case at all. Leaning heavily into the guilt trip, she casually dropped some insane dragon family lore. Favoritism was terrible, sure, but her mother used to entertain 100 human men at once, and even she had 2 or 3 undeniable favorites. Yoram whistled from the sidelines, thoroughly amused. "Your mother really lived on the wild side, huh?" She smirked, enjoying the chaos. Bomb cast her gaze downward, perfectly playing the role of a tragic heroine. "I guess I'm just like one of those 97 abandoned men," she sighed pitifully. Completely lost, Jay asked what on earth she was talking about. "You kidnapped me first," she accused softly. "But now, you don't even spare me a single glance. It is like a fisherman entirely ignoring his prize catch." The sorrow in her voice was thick, playing up how completely tossed aside she felt. Gule instantly rushed to her side, offering gentle pats of comfort while shooting Jay a deadly glare for being so incredibly heartless. Even Yoram chimed in as the voice of reason. She knew exactly why he constantly babysat them, but swore they wouldn't burn the city down today. "You cannot play the overprotective warden forever," she reminded him. Defeated by their overwhelming combined forces, he finally surrendered. A sly smile crossed Bomb's face. Everything was falling perfectly into her master plan. Soon, they arrived at the Grand Academy Gymnasium. The moment they walked in, every chaperone's radar locked onto Bomb. After all, carrying the heavy reputation of being the infamous Yoram's sister made her an instant target for gossip. Whispers echoed through the grand hall. Her breathtaking beauty was one thing, but rumors of her flawless entrance interview score had already become legendary. Everyone was dying to uncover which elite bloodline she belonged to, but the noble gossip quickly turned sour. Word spread that she hailed from an absolute nobody family, and the snooty elites could not help but mock her supposedly tacky and unrefined surname. Jay stood silently in the shadows like a loyal, looming guard. Today's curriculum was social etiquette theory, and the professor announced they would be spending the rest of the period mastering ballroom dancing. Groans erupted from the elite crowd as one embarrassed student loudly complained about how incredibly awkward this entire ordeal was going to be. But the professor's strict voice sliced right through the whining. If you are to awaken as superhumans bearing your family's noble crest, high society banquets are your unavoidable battlefield, she declared. Looking like a fumbling fool on a grand stage is a fate far worse than death. With that absolute warning, she commanded the pupils to immediately secure their dance partners. She even teased them to boldly ask their secret crushes if they dared. But the crowd's attention shifted right back to Bomb. The academy's top beauty was standing completely alone. Everyone assumed a massive line of suitors would instantly form, but one brave boy whispered the harsh truth. She radiated an untouchable, otherworldly aura that completely terrified anyone from taking a single step closer. It was an instinctual warning, a deep feeling that mere mortals should not dare cross her path. Scanning the room, the professor noticed this brilliant student was stranded without a match. Bomb just offered a bittersweet smile. I suppose I'm just not very popular, she chuckled softly. But the professor was not buying that blatant lie for a single second. Taking pity on her, the professor offered to step in as her partner, but Bomb's eyes suddenly glimmered with a hidden motive. She politely asked if her personal chaperone could take the floor instead. The professor gave the green light, and Bomb practically floated over to where Jay was standing. Meeting his stoic gaze, she elegantly offered her hand and whispered, "Shall we?" "I have zero experience on a dance floor," he replied flatly. She tilted her head, her eyes pleading softly. "Are you really planning to abandon me up there?" Defeated once again, a heavy sigh escaped his lips. The professor's voice commanded them to lock hands and step to the rhythm. Jay's entire presence screamed pure discomfort. Looking down, Bomb noticed his trembling fingers. He was genuinely hesitating to make contact. "Are you actually embarrassed to touch me?" she teased with a dazzling, mischievous smile. Without waiting for an answer, she boldly captured his hands within her own. "Relax. Physical contact will not magically link our souls together," she whispered reassuringly. But her tone suddenly shifted into strict academy mode, warning him not to slack off because her perfect grades were on the line. The music swelled, and the dance began. They glided across the floor, though he desperately kept his eyes glued to the wall. Hidden behind her graceful facade, she was secretly dying of amusement at his nervously sweating palms. A wildly mischievous thought crossed her mind. Was this stoic protector sweating everywhere else just from a simple waltz? Her gaze naturally drifted down to his broad chest. Like a lightning strike, the memory of his half-naked, sculpted physique from earlier flashed through her brain, instantly painting her face in a massive crimson blush. Her concentration completely shattered, and her foot slipped. But before she could hit the ground, his lightning-fast reflexes kicked in. He caught her by the waist, pulling her in so tight their breaths mingled in the air. Even his unreadable face cracked with shock. Time seemed to freeze for Bomb. Her heart practically hammered out of her ribcage as her cheeks burned hotter than dragon fire, but this intense romantic tension was violently cut short. Her brain completely overloaded, she fainted on the spot with a massive nosebleed. Fast forward to a peaceful cafe, she was quietly sipping a bright pink drink. When he scolded her for skipping the hospital, she proudly declared that supreme dragon beings do not need doctors, and she was perfectly fine now. He crossed his arms, staring at her with pure, unadulterated suspicion. "It makes zero sense for you to bleed like that when absolutely nothing hit your face," he pointed out with cold logic. Hiding behind her cup, her ears turned bright red once again. "I have absolutely no idea what you are talking about," she stammered, completely failing to hide her immense, heart-racing embarrassment. Her eyes widened as she pointed out his unexpectedly flawless footwork. She pressed him, asking if he had learned to dance somewhere before. But our protagonist simply fell silent. His mind drifted back to a distant, bittersweet memory. A vision surfaced of a striking, black-haired girl guiding his clumsy steps. Back then, he had not been quite as hopeless as she initially thought. She had affectionately called him Captain, promising that with enough practice, he would naturally improve. The memory weighed heavy on his heart, casting a shadow over his face. Shaking off the nostalgia, he coldly lied to his current companion, claiming he had never learned to dance. A sudden spark lit up her eyes. Leaning in, she asked if he had any plans after school. His answer was a blunt and simple: no. Seizing the moment, she playfully invited him to do something fun together. But while romance bloomed here, halfway across the world, In Moscow, Russia, absolute chaos erupted. Inside the demonic human organization's invisibility research facility, blaring alarms shattered the silence. A terrified demonic woman sprinted down a blood-soaked hallway, her path littered with the mangled corpses of her comrades. Panic and sheer annoyance gripped her trembling heart. Where in the world did that absolute monster come from? She knew the bitter truth. All the defensive forces they had left were mere paper shields against such overwhelming power. Her only thought was survival, to escape this slaughterhouse and warn the headquarters. But like a phantom, stepping out of a nightmare, Jitae materialized before her, chillingly asking why she was in such a desperate rush. Trembling, she demanded to know what he wanted. His voice was like ice as he declared that his lord was searching for the commander-class transcendent demonic human, Prototype X. But even in the face of death, she stubbornly refused to spill the secret. A sinister smirk crept across Jitae's face. He casually mentioned how many of her pathetic kind he had already slaughtered. He whispered a dark truth. When they are hovering right on the brink of death, their ugly, true nature always bleeds through. When the excruciating agony finally breaks their minds, that fake human facade shatters, leaving them thrashing wildly like a broken puppet with cut strings. With a terrifyingly calm smile, he asked if she, too, wished to dance under the pale moonlight. In the blink of an eye, the defiant demonic human was reduced to a lifeless corpse, drowning in her own pool of crimson blood. The mission accomplished, the clone established a telepathic link with his master. He respectfully delivered the grim report. Prototype X had already been used for a live demonstration and was relocated straight to the invisibility headquarters. There was one crucial difference this time, though. Unlike all of his previous regressions, this timeline's Prototype X was a female. Our protagonist's eyes narrowed, his brilliant mind processing this dangerous anomaly. He sharply questioned if the chief researcher's name was Vera. Without missing a beat, the clone confirmed his master's suspicions. The orders were absolute. He commanded his shadow to take on Vera's appearance, infiltrate the very heart of the enemy headquarters, and uncover the true identity of Prototype X. The loyal clone simply replied, "Yes, my lord." And with that, the telepathic connection severed into dead silence. The commander-class transcendent demonic human, Prototype X. It was a catastrophic existence, born with the terrifying divine ability to forcefully bind countless corrupted minds into a single, unstoppable entity. Time was its greatest weapon. The longer it was allowed to draw breath, the more corrupted minds it assimilated, rapidly evolving into an apocalyptic threat. Because of this horrifying potential, our protagonist had made it his absolute priority to hunt down and slaughter Prototype X first in every single one of his past regressions. But fate was playing a cruel game. In this current regression, the variables had drastically shifted, turning the hunt into an absolute nightmare. Suddenly, the divine authority, Grand Clock X, began to resonate, reading a foul malice seeping in from beyond the horizon of providence. The ancient artifact violently scanned the very fabric of reality, searching for the anomaly that had dared to deviate from the world's natural timeline. He stood like a silent mountain as the scan swept across the world. A dark realization dawned on him. Prototype X's shifted identity had to be the dirty work of that same mysterious malice the Guardian had warned him about. A smoldering fury ignited in his chest. Despite all his sacrifices, the universe was still conspiring against him. But his resolve was absolute. He would brutally annihilate anything that dared to threaten his peaceful daily life. His murderous aura was abruptly shattered by a sweet voice calling his name. Right, they were currently inside a bright clothing store. He blinked away the bloodlust and casually asked what she needed. She eagerly urged him to hurry over, but as he pulled back the curtain, his heart skipped a beat. There she stood, radiating beauty in a stunning bikini, playfully asking if she looked good. Flustered, he immediately averted his gaze, stammering out a demand to know what on earth she was doing. With an innocent smile, she reasoned that summer was just around the corner, making it the absolute perfect time to shop for some gorgeous swimwear. Noticing his shy distance, a mischievous glint flashed in her eyes. She teasingly suggested he could not see the details from out there, and boldly invited him straight into the cramped fitting room. Trying to maintain his cool composure, he grumbled that she promised a fun outing. Not a heart-stopping, pointless prank. But she just giggled like a victorious mastermind, cheekily replying that she was having the time of her life. Leaning closer, she accused him of harboring some very wicked thoughts. He gave her a stern warning not to test his patience. Shortly after leaving the boutique, she poked his side, demanding he admit that he secretly wanted a better look earlier. He shot back a flat and immediate no. Pouting her cherry lips, she pressed him further, demanding to know why a healthy guy would not want to steal a peek. She twisted the knife of regret, playfully whining that she really should have just bought it to drive him crazy. Letting out an exhausted sigh, he asked if she was finally done fooling around so they could just head home. Dropping her teasing act, her expression softened into a warm smile. She confessed her true mission. They were there to buy presents for the kids. Little Giel's favorite teddy bear was falling apart at the seams, so a replacement was needed, along with special gifts for the rest of their chaotic family. Confused by her sudden maternal instinct, he asked what brought this on. She sighed, explaining that Gail was obsessed with fashion but completely neglected the more practical, heartfelt things in life. So, she had thoughtfully planned to gift Gail a high-quality, elegant wallet. That way, the girl would never have to feel insecure or small when hanging out with her trendy friends. He arched an eyebrow, asking what she planned for Urim. Baum smiled, revealing she had interrogated the girl yesterday. And Urim actually had a specific, albeit incredibly weird, item on her wish list. Taking charge like a true commander, she divided their forces. She would hunt down the gifts for Gail and Urim while strictly assigning him the ultimate quest. Picking out the perfect present for Gail, she watched with amusement as he marched off into the unknown. A flicker of concern crossed her face. Would the fearsome warrior actually survive a children's shopping aisle? Cut to our protagonist, stepping into a brightly colored toy store, where a hopelessly bored female staff member leaned against the counter. The clerk's sharp eyes immediately locked onto his towering figure as he awkwardly examined a fluffy stuffed animal. Scanning him like a radar, she estimated his age to be late 20s or early 30s. With those broad shoulders and striking features. Was this absolute stud, a runway model, or a seasoned soldier? Even better. There was no woman by his side. Plus, the totally lost, clueless expression on his handsome face practically screamed that he knew absolutely zero about baby toys. Target locked! Her inner saleswoman smirked, knowing perfectly well that clueless, handsome guys like him opened their wallets without a second thought. Just like scanning a power level, she read his vulnerability as completely over 9,000. Slipping on her best retail smile, she smoothly approached the giant and asked for the age of the lucky baby. He casually replied that the child was about 4 years old. Taking her shot, she innocently asked if he was shopping for his beloved daughter. He shook his head with a gentle sigh, clarifying that it was not his actual daughter, but rather a special little girl in his care. Instantly assuming he was the doting uncle, she turned up the charm. She praised him, saying it was super rare to see uncles trying so hard to pick out the perfect gift, before brutally destroying his confidence by pointing out his absolute lack of aesthetic sense in toy selection. The saleswoman playfully pressed a toy stethoscope against his chest. She smoothly explained that for a growing 4-year-old, ordinary dolls just wouldn't cut it anymore. Interactive playsets were the ultimate way to bond with a child, she confidently claimed. Plus, buying the main kit unlocked a sweet 10% discount on every expansion set. As she gestured toward the premium displays, Jai's imagination immediately ran wild. The mere thought of little Goulet running around as a tiny nurse completely melted his heart. A sly smirk crept across the saleswoman's face. She knew her trap had worked. She had just hooked a massive whale. Before he knew it, his shopping cart was overflowing to the brim. But the staff kept sweet-talking him, insisting every single expensive item was absolutely crucial for a baby's emotional growth. When she casually asked for his payment method, her eyes nearly bulged out of her skull. He handed over a pristine black card, an exclusive artifact only issued to the top VIP families in the country. Suddenly, his extravagant spending made perfect sense. Bathed in the glow of endless wealth, the man standing before her suddenly looked infinitely more handsome. Noting his lack of a wedding ring, greedy ambition sparked in her eyes. But just as she purred out a question about his relationship status, Baum materialized out of nowhere and fiercely locked arms with him. Baum coldly asked if he was seriously buying all this junk. The saleswoman flinched, terrified that this fierce newcomer was his actual girlfriend. However, catching sight of Baum's academy uniform, the cunning clerk deduced she was just a nagging younger sister. Little did she know, Baum was currently glaring daggers straight into her soul. The staff tried launching back into her sales pitch about developmental toys, but Baum brutally shut her down. She firmly stated that Goulet absolutely despised those kinds of things. Thinking she had misheard, the clerk blinked in confusion, only for Baum to fiercely double down on her rejection. Scanning the aisles, Baum casually snatched up a simple stuffed bear instead. It was almost a perfect replica of the child's original toy, guaranteeing instant comfort. Jai chuckled, admitting that was the exact item he had come for in the first place. With a sharp gaze, Baum demanded to know if this simple bear also qualified for the VIP discount. Later that night, the atmosphere in the dorm was electric, as the others marveled at their loot. A mountain of gifts sat triumphantly in the living room. Gail beamed with pure delight at her new wallet, exclaiming it was exactly what she needed before showering them with gratitude. Little Goulet was practically glowing as she hugged her new bear. Meanwhile, Yoram sported a devilish smirk as she tore into her own package, instantly sparking Gail's burning curiosity. With shameless pride, Yoram revealed a stash of incredibly scandalous novelty items. She immediately lunged toward Gail with a wicked grin, threatening to test the bizarre gadgets on her right then and there. Gale's desperate screams echoed through the entire house, leaving Yule and Jai facepalming in utter defeat. Bomb just watched the pure chaos unfold. In her own twisted way, this was Yoram expressing her heartfelt thanks. Then, the mood shifted as Bomb shyly handed a wrapped box to Jai. Having noticed he always wore the exact same boring necktie, she had specifically picked out a stylish upgrade. With a determined gleam in her eyes, she vowed to buy him a full designer suit once she started making real money. Jai's expression softened as he warmly thanked her. He gently scolded her, saying she should have spoiled herself with a gift as well. But Bomb just offered a mysterious smile, claiming she had indeed picked up a little something. When he curiously pressed for details, she simply teased that she would reveal it when the time was right. Hidden safely inside her wardrobe, a daring new bikini waited patiently. Fast forward a few weeks later, the grand doors of fate swung open. Jai summoned the facility's caretaker to his quarters. With a serious tone, he announced a 3-day expedition and entrusted him with the absolute protection of little Gule. The caretaker nervously asked if he was heading into dangerous territory. Jai nodded firmly, revealing that the chaotic Yoram would be marching right by his side. Just hours later, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. Swarms of students, clad in tactical combat vests, stood trembling before a massive, swirling dimensional rift. The moment of truth had finally arrived. It was time for the grueling anti-demonic human battle simulation. This brutal exam was a 3-day, 2-night survival nightmare forged inside a hyper-realistic virtual dungeon. Students had to form tight 3-man squads, trusting their lives to the absolute commands of their assigned chaperone. In the Hunter world, this vital command structure was known as operating. It was a system directly inherited from elite superhuman guilds, where the battlefield operator dictated life and death during catastrophic monster raids. In this brutal simulation, the chaperone wields that absolute authority, acting as the squad's omniscient operator. Yoram sneered down at the trembling students with absolute disgust. To her predator's eyes, these pathetic newborns wouldn't last a single second in a true bloodbath. But Jai shattered her arrogant attitude, warning her that a lone wolf mindset meant instant failure here. She was strictly required to forge a 3-man party to conquer the impending trials. She scoffed, tossing her hair back. She fully intended to assemble a team, but only if she managed to find anyone worthy of her devastating presence. Almost instantly, 2 timid students approached her with a desperate invitation. She immediately growled at the losers to scram, but Jai calmly stepped in to ask for their names. The trembling boy introduced himself as Haki. His full name was Haki Sojiro, and beside him stood a pale girl named Kim Ji-in. Bowing deeply, they swore upon their honor to fight with everything they had and never become dead weight. Yoram's eyes flared with annoyance as she commanded the brats to disappear. But to her absolute shock, Jai completely ignored her rage and officially welcomed them into the party. He coldly challenged her. If she hated the lineup so much, she was free to scout her own squad. Knowing how incredibly tedious that sounded, Yoram violently clicked her tongue in defeat. Leaning in with a blood-curdling glare, she promised the weaklings that if they tripped her up in the dungeon, she would personally end them. Surprisingly, Sojiro bowed and thanked her for the opportunity. Smack! Out of nowhere, a vicious blow struck the back of Sojiro's head. A towering student loomed over him, sneering that he would butcher him if he ever blocked his path again. Sojiro instantly shrank back and muttered a pathetic apology, while Jian watched with a heartbreaking expression of pity. The bully then turned his menacing gaze onto her, mocking that since her pathetic boyfriend begged for mercy, she better start groveling too. With a cruel laugh, he ruthlessly grabbed her by the head, applying agonizing pressure to force the words from her mouth. The bully's lackeys nervously whispered for him to chill out, warning that the elite chaperones were watching. But the instigator, Johnny, just scoffed with a sickening grin. Why would the adults care about a couple of worthless orphans? Twisting her hair violently, he barked at her to move her bangs, throwing vile insults at her gloomy, defeated face. Tears welling in her eyes, she unleashed a desperate scream for him to let go. But Johnny's twisted amusement only grew. He loved it when the trash finally found the nerve to talk back. Hey, what exactly is an orphan? A chilling voice cut through the air. Johnny froze in pure terror as he turned to face Yoram. Every survival instinct in his body screamed at him. He was staring dead into the eyes of the absolute craziest lunatic of the Blue Dragon Academy. Her killing intent suffocated the area as she demanded an answer. Cold sweat poured down Johnny's face. Even the Academy's highest elders had explicitly warned him, never, under any circumstances, provoke the sleeping dragon. With a condescending smirk, he explained the Academy's harsh reality. An orphan wasn't just a student without a sponsor. It meant you were absolute garbage, a dirt-poor nobody with zero backing. The brutal reality of their rank finally clicked in her head. She let out a frustrated groan, openly complaining about being stuck in a squad of absolute beggars. Seeing his golden opportunity, he smoothly threw an arm around her shoulder. He leaned in incredibly close, asking if she was seriously bound to those pathetic losers. Why would a powerhouse like her waste her overwhelming talent on such useless baggage? With a sly grin, he offered her a lifeline. His elite squad was completely full, but for her, he'd gladly kick someone to the curb. His own crew gasped in pure disbelief. But this snake had a hidden agenda. He just wanted to use her overwhelming strength as a stepping stone for his own selfish ambitions. He arrogantly figured they were cut from the same ruthless cloth. As long as he stroked her ego, she'd be completely under his control. But out of nowhere, bam, a devastating fist smashed directly into his jaw. His lackeys stood entirely paralyzed. Even her own squad couldn't believe their eyes. Glaring down at the pathetic fool, she coldly asked if he possessed a death wish. Blazing wrath radiated from her entire being. How dare this absolute stranger casually throw his filthy arm around her shoulder? Who gave him the right to act so buddy-buddy? In her eyes, he was nothing but bottom-tier academy trash. Clutching his throbbing face, the terrifying reality finally hit him. This girl was completely psychotic. One more word, and she promised to bury him right then and there. But beneath his terrified cowering, a venomous grudge took root. Meanwhile, her team could only stare in absolute, dumbfounded shock. Jitae let out a heavy, defeated sigh. Just minutes later, a booming voice commanded the Great Hall's attention. The professor stepped up to outline the brutal survival rules. It was none other than Jitae, the legendary demonic human combat instructor. The massive cohort would be split into 50 distinct squads, each dropping into completely randomized spawn points. Every single action held extreme weight. Kills, deaths, and raw damage taken would all be converted into a brutal point system, and those life-or-death rankings would be broadcast to the entire academy in real time. The penalty for getting wiped out? A grueling 3-hour wait in the void before violently respawning at a completely unknown location. Welcome to the virtual hellscape known as the Ant Nest. He offered a grim wish for their survival, leaving a heavy, suffocating tension hanging over the terrified students. Stepping through the spatial portal, the digital environment materialized around them. Yoram scanned the bleak area, casually admitting that the simulation was somewhat decent. A feral, battle-hungry grin stretched across her face. She was absolutely itching to beat everything into a bloody pulp, but Jian quickly snapped her back to reality, asking if she had any tactical clue where the enemies were hiding. Her master plan? Just sprint blindly until they smashed into someone. Jian had to desperately remind this battle maniac that the rest of them lacked her godlike speed and infinite stamina. If she charged forward like a raging bull, the fragile support line would be left wide open for a devastating rear ambush. Yoram just scoffed, asking if Jian was seriously bragging about being dead weight. Gritting her teeth, Jian clarified that they desperately needed a concrete strategy before making a single move. As far as Yoram was concerned, the grand strategy was brilliantly simple. Just shut up, stay right behind her, and don't get in the way of her glorious rampage. Jian sharply retorted that this was a coordinated team war, not a solo vanity project. Yoram glared back, deeply offended. She had shown mercy to this stray, and now the ungrateful dog was daring to bite the hand that fed it. The mounting disrespect was seriously ticking her off. Stepping into the verbal crossfire, Sojiro frantically tried to play peacemaker. Desperate to shift the focus, he quickly changed the subject, asking if they had pinpointed a specific target number yet. Jian tilted her head in utter confusion. Sojiro clarified his question, wondering which unlucky squad they should flank first. But Jian immediately shut down that optimistic thinking, warning that this bloodbath wouldn't be a walk in the park. Every single unit was equipped with a dedicated tactical operator. There was absolutely no way they would just carelessly leave their defensive blind spots wide open. Yoram rolled her eyes at the depressing tactical talk. She didn't care about strategy or designated targets. Her terrifyingly simple goal? Utterly annihilate anything that dared to breathe in her general direction. Meanwhile, deep within the dungeon's shadows, Johnny was relentlessly whining about his throbbing, broken nose. His squad's operator showed zero sympathy, coldly reminding him that he brought this karma upon himself by acting like a big shot in front of a known monster. Rubbing his bruised ego, he pathetically defended his actions, claiming he was only trying to build a friendly, strategic alliance. How was he supposed to know the girl was an absolute lunatic? Feeling incredibly insecure, one of his underlings nervously chimed in, asking if Johnny had genuinely planned to kick them off the team back there. Johnny scoffed, aggressively denying the accusation. It was all just a brilliant psychological test to gauge her true character. But beneath his empty excuses, his blood was boiling with absolute, burning humiliation. Gnashing his teeth, he swore a brutal oath. The next time their paths crossed, he would rip her to absolute shreds. But fate has a wicked sense of humor. Dropping like a terrifying predator from the ceiling above, a familiar voice taunted him to test his luck. Bam! A devastating dropkick planted directly onto his already shattered face. In a single merciless strike, his virtual health bar plummeted from a perfect 100 down to a miserable 17. The sheer force sent him crashing violently against the dungeon wall. Panic erupted as the operator screamed in pure terror. She had completely bypassed their radar. Alarms blared as the shocked team was ordered into immediate combat formation. Weapons were drawn in a flash, a glowing blade and a heavy-duty firearm locked onto their target. But standing amidst the settling dust, Yoram let out a chilling, sinister laugh. They were gravely misunderstanding the situation. This wasn't going to be a glorious battle. It was merely a one-sided slaughter of helpless little mutts. And with that explosive cliffhanger, we wrap up today's epic recap. If your blood is pumping and you need the next chapter right now, all the weekly updates are moving over to my second channel, Manhwa Updater. Don't miss out on a single ounce of this incredible action. Head over there, subscribe to join the ultimate update gang, and witness the total annihilation. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Keep leveling up in real life. Stay cool, and stay absolutely awesome.